So we're waiting for it to stream. So you'll let us know when it's streaming. I see one person. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dixon. You're muted. So I have the power, I guess. We have the power. Okay. Does that mean it's live? Oh, now that's Mr. Peck. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Peck. Okay, again, we have no one physically in attendance today other than those that need to be here, but thank you to those that are online for watching. We are going to start with a word of prayer, and that will be given by Council Member Brittany Bills.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful today for the opportunity we have to be gathered together as residents of Highland, and pray that we will be able to have thy spirit and wisdom with us as we discuss the issues surrounding our city, and pray that we will be able to have respectful and productive conversations tonight, and pray for thy blessings to be with our community. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Kirk, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand with me. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. There is time for unscheduled public appearances. Since no one is here, do you want to check online and see if anybody wants to make a public comment?
So someone does, I'm just unmuting.
Okay.
Am I unmuted? Hello? Hello?
We're here. We hear you.
Okay. This is Cole Peck. I got the ordinance in writing today from Tara, and I had a question because it was a little confusing the way it was written. I mean, it's not confusing. It was a little bit hard for me to understand. So I asked her the question because I remember talking about the different items, you know, like the maximum 7%, but then there was a maximum side of 8,000. And I remember saying that they wanted a minimum of 60-foot rear setback and a 30-foot side setback. And then down in 3.3, it talks about the going from 25 to 35, and you would add 2 foot to the side yard and the rear yard, which makes sense. And so I said to Tara, I said that makes sense as long as it's going off the original 4, like on item 4 C, which is because I have way more footage front to back, so I'm not worried about front and back. I have more than you'll ever want. But the way I understood this to be talked about, because we went over and over about the side setback being 30 foot, because we were going to add, you had the original 10 foot, and then if I went 10 foot taller, I'd add 20 foot to my side yard, which would give me the 30 foot. And that was the minimum that was up above. And she thought that was the way earlier, but then she called me back tonight and said, no, I think it's 20 foot added on to the 60 foot and the 30 foot. And I said, no, because we talked about that. And I said, what would I do with 50 foot on the side yard? And so I just wanted to clarify what we were trying to do is not get too far to the east and block my neighbor. But I know we had a minimum of 60 and 30, which I will have that. But if you're adding the 2 foot, I just hope that you'll add the 2 foot extra to the rear and the side based on the ordinance that's already in place, which is the 10-foot. So I kind of talked to Todd about that, and I sent Scott a quick text. So I just hope you'll understand what we were trying to do. And I know when we were listening, I didn't ever hear or understand that anybody was ever trying to make it 50-foot side setback or 80-foot rear setback. So I just hope you'll take that into account so we can get this ordinance to be able to be usable. Thank you. Uh-oh, they're gone. Can you guys hear me?
We still can. Do
Oh,
you have
okay.
something else to add?
No, I just didn't hear anybody, so I thought maybe I was talking into thin air.
No, we heard you.
Okay, thank you
Thank you,
so
Cole.
much.
Anyone else, Tara?
So no one on YouTube Live and no one on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. We will now close unscheduled public appearances and go to what I am most excited about today, which is a citizen survey presentation by our esteemed Aaron Wells.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm a little afraid, based on that introduction, Mayor. That's a little bit of, a lot
I
to
set
take
the
in.
expectations high.
It'll be great. Okay, excuse me just a minute. I'm gonna share a different screen that will have the survey results on them. Okay. All right. Okay, Mayor and Council, you are being handed out a copy of these as well for your perusal, hard copy, and then we'll also upload these online in the next couple of days. I just didn't want to do so quite yet in case there were any additional changes that we needed to make. I'll go through these, and I know we have a long meeting, so I'm going to try and be brief, but I welcome any questions that you do have. So I'm going to start out with a bit of sad news. We normally get around 1,000 responses for our survey. This year, about half of it was conducted during our COVID, during the very beginning stages of the COVID pandemic, when it came to Utah, and we saw a significant decrease in our number of results. So 674 households in comparison to around 1,000. So we dropped about 400 responses, which is very sad. So honestly, everything else we do was the same from previous years. So the only thing I can attribute it to is COVID and that people were distracted and busy with other things, understandably. While I know it's not as high as we would like it to be, we still do have a pretty high confidence level because this is about 15% of the households in Highland. That being said, we definitely saw some shifts in the demographics in this survey, and I'm going to go over that now. Normally I do that at the end, but I'm going to go over that now just so you can kind of frame these results in your mind. So when you look at the how many people took the survey online, normally we hover in about the 50 range, give or take. We were down to 40% this time, which we did drop close to that in 2017, but normally we're about around 50-50, but this time we had significantly less online surveys being completed. In addition, if you look, this is the most dramatic decrease when we look, or dramatic difference when we look at what we expect the results to be and what they actually are. So here I'm comparing what people recorded themselves as whether or not they had children in the home. And so 45% of people said they had children in the home, but if you look at the most recent American Community Survey data, it should be 56% of people. So we're seeing about a 10% change there. Paired that with the fact that a lot more of our surveys came through the paper version than online, this seems to be an older demographic that we touched into here. and the younger demographic wasn't as representative in our results. Here again, a similar situation. So this is actually looking at age, and so we are underrepresented in the 25 to 44 age range. We're underrepresented there, and overrepresented in the 65 and older. So 32% of our respondents said that they were 65 and older, but in reality, our community is only about 15%. So keep those in the back of your mind as we're looking at these results. Good news, our quality of life category is still high. So this is the percent of people who say that we have a good or excellent quality of life in Highland. And we always hover around 55, 57%. And again, we're right there.
No, you mean 95 to 96%.
I'm sorry, I am. I just had a bit of switching going on in my mind. Yes, 95 to 97, and we're right there. Okay, the next category we rate, we have our respondents rate how our personnel are doing. I'm going to shrink this a little bit so you can see the full thing. Again, this is the percent of people who are saying that we are doing good or excellent, and we break it down by category of personnel. So we have elected officials, general city staff, library, and our public works field staff. And I've got a table below on those so you can actually see the numbers, but I think the graph kind of gives you a little bit of an indication in the movement there. Some good news. Some of you may know that last year we took a significant hit in our survey results where almost every indicator question came back worse than it did the year before. We were worse in our personnel, worse in all of our services. It seemed like people were in a bad mood when they took the survey last year, but luckily that trend has reversed and people are happier, right? Or at least they were when they took the survey. So, or more happy with what we were doing for them. So that included each of our personnel categories. Let's see, the most significant jump was for elected officials, actually. You rose by 7%, so congratulations, all of you. The library has always and continues to always be our rock stars. They have 94% of respondents say that they are good or excellent in terms of their, let's see, let me read the phrase, their professionalism. And then looking at, so this is a humongous table or humongous graph that I know you can't really get information out of, but it's kind of fun to look at the different trackings over the years. But I'm going to scroll down to the table that has the actual numbers in them. So we rate a number of our, pretty much as many service categories as we can come up with. We ask people to rate how we were doing there. And again, this is what percent of people say we're doing good or excellent in any of these categories. And again, you see in every single one, we had a positive movement this year. So I'm thrilled about that. Our highest, the largest increase was actually in communications. So we saw a 17% increase in the number of, or in the percent of people who think we're doing good or excellent in that category. So I do want to thank a lot of you are active on social media and share what the city is sharing, and I appreciate that. I think that helps and goes a long way.
The new website might have helped.
The new website hopefully helped. We are seeing, this is another data point I should share with you, Council. We were seeing for a while a decrease in our website usage over the past year or so, and then once we started with the new website, we're now seeing an upward trend. So I'm happy about that. It's such an improvement, especially from a mobile device. I really think that people are appreciating that. They're certainly using it more. So let's see, there was one more I wanted to call out on this. Because they always have a fun competition, fire and EMS are always the highest and continue to be so here at 95 and 96%. Police is the second highest at 90%. And interestingly enough, garbage was also high at 90%. So we hope that number continues as we switch to a new provider. Another thing, so if you look over the so this is our 5th year, it's kind of fun to see where we've been over the past 5 years. Our other events category, which has grown over the past 5 years, has increased by 25% actually over 5 years. So it was originally at 55% and now it's at 80%. And that's kudos to Julie and to Corinne for continuing that for us. And then, so our one sad the lowest rating we have is road maintenance, where 37% of people are saying we're doing good or excellent. But looking at it from a positive lens, we actually have increased that almost 20 points over the past 5 years. So it's one that has increased every single year, and so we hope that continues to increase. All right, so we are going to talk about parks now for a little bit. Sorry. So we asked, originally this question was asked last year specifically about Mountain Ridge Park. We decided to ask it again this year just to see if people's appetites has changed much for what they want to see in terms of additional recreation elements coming to the city. We did see a little bit of change, but again, this might be a representation of the fact that we're seeing a slightly different audience as well. So so the playgrounds, the desire for playgrounds and open fields went down. In contrast, the desire for pickleball courts and a dog park went up. The top desires are number 1, walking paths, number 2, general playground equipment, number 3, pickleball courts, number 4, an all abilities playground, and then dog park and open fields are our top ones there. All receiving above, let's see, above 15% in terms, or 15% was the cutoff, in terms of the amount of people who want to see additional elements there. Okay. We're going to talk about funding increase. So this is a question that the question has remained the same over 5 years, but the categories we've asked about have changed. So I think it's better to look at the table on this one just because you don't see a lot of trend there. So we asked the question, are there any things that you would support the city in raising additional funds through fees or taxes for? Some years we've seen like a high, yes, I want this to happen, like roads the very first year in 2017. 2018 is kind of an anomaly. I wasn't supposed to ask the question. It was a mistake because we instituted the road fee before then. But so roads was a standout one. The year we did public safety, they were our high ones with police and fire at about 50%. We don't have that level of distinction this year. If anything, it would be with parks and trails. They're the highest with 46 and 47% of people saying that they would likely or very likely support the city raising additional funds. But I think this speaks to the fact that if we do, if council chooses to pursue this in the future, we need to do some good communications campaign to help people understand the need that we do have. This question was about library materials. What things do you want to see? And again, Donna has changed the question a little bit. This second year, we've just kind of changed the categories a little bit. So don't look too much at the trends because the question was significantly different between the 2 different years. But for your information, the thing that people most want to see are DVDs, ebooks, adult fiction, and children's fiction. I thought DVDs and ebooks were interesting because that's not a hard library material that you traditionally think of necessarily, but we do have a good selection of DVDs, and I'm a huge ebook fan myself, so it's interesting to see that.
I was disappointed that there were no comments on Brian Braithwaite's.
Well, let's see, we needed more, I think last year we needed more romance novels for Brian Braithwaite, right? Yeah. There was a comment about that from who knows who.
There was nothing that funny in
this year's survey
that I've seen so far, and I think I've looked at all of them at least once.
Absolutely.
I'm a little surprised about the audiobooks because, especially since it was more seniors and mature citizens, oftentimes they lose the ability to read well, and friends and patients I take care of, they all use audiobooks. So I'm kind of surprised about that one.
Tara, is Donna online by chance?
I don't see her.
Okay, because as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing there's a few different categories of audiobooks she has, Scott. So you've got general audiobooks, books on CD, and e-audiobooks. And so I'm trying to think what audiobooks would be
So I would guess,
Just
when I,
combine them all.
when
yeah,
I-
so I think maybe if you combined them all, that would be the digital, some sort of listening mechanism. It's just, are you doing it via CD or are you doing
Okay.
it on an app?
So I believe the audiobooks are CD, and then the e-audiobooks would be ones that you can get through
Except
online.
she called out books on CD, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm a little confused what that tells us.
No, yeah, so I'll have to ask her about that to be certain, what audiobooks are versus books on CD. So maybe that is one we should just combine. But good question, I'll follow up on.
If you combined it, it would be the same or more as last year, actually, maybe a little bit more.
14, 30.
Yeah, the question
Mhm.
was asked differently this year.
Yeah, it was, somewhat different, so. The next question we asked was about so we often ask a question about communications, but this year we wanted to ask, what do you care about? What do you want us to spend time telling you about? And it seemed like there was a good distinction here between, what I would call like, hard, central city services versus, leisure services. So our top things that people wanted to know about were council decisions, elections, and then projects around the city, whether it was our own projects or development projects, and then various seasonal things that come up, like the splash pad, Christmas tree collection, holiday closures, things like that is what we categorized under seasonal. So that seemed to be kind of our top categories that people wanted to know. We definitely have a group who are interested in our leisure services, but they're a smaller group who at least identified as it being fairly or very important to hear about things. So in terms of arts council, library, volunteer opportunities, and city events.
Interesting. So I would ask that we look at promoting the GIS map that Tara did, that shows all the projects that are going on in the city. So
Yeah,
maybe we can-
absolutely.
Maybe in the newsletter, make a little.
It was, and there was an article about it in the newsletter, and Joanne's working on some information that we're going to put out this week about the different projects that are starting right now and the craziness that's about to ensue in Highland. Craziness for the better, I should say. So. All right, council, let's talk about parks a little bit more. Let me shrink this so you can see both of these charts at once. Okay, park use. We asked a question this year. We were curious, how are people using our parks and for what purpose? Again, keep in mind the demographic that we're looking at here, but it seems like a small percent of our community are using it for something we call organized play. So that we categorize that as like practice or games for sports. So a competitive sport that you're either practicing or playing a game in, or tournament, that kind of a thing. So I think that makes sense. You know, there are certainly some segment of our community who are interested in that, but I'm not sure it's the broad community. Those numbers, again, might be, I think, are slightly different because of our demographic, but here are the results from that. But in terms of passive play, we have a huge number of people who are telling us that they're using it for passive play. We did say, so think about only warm weather times when it's actually you're able to get out of the house. So looks like about 77% of people are saying they're using it at least once a month, and 27% are saying they're using it once a week for some sort of passive play, whether you're walking around the park, taking your child to the playground, just kind of going out and enjoying nature, throwing a ball for your dog, that type of a thing. So passive play is how people are using our parks. And then trails. We asked a similar question about trails, but our categories were different. So for trails, we wanted to know, are you using it for exercise or go out and enjoy the trails, enjoy nature, or are you traveling somewhere? And if you are traveling, where are you going? So exercise and enjoyment, again, we actually see 44% of people are saying they're using the trails multiple times per week during the warm weather, or getting out and using the trails for exercise type of activities. And then if you look at the traveling ones, it's certainly less, especially So traveling to school, again, because of the age demographics, I would expect this, but a very small percentage, so 14% are traveling multiple times per week to school on our trails. And 60% say they're never traveling to school, or them or someone in their household, I should clarify.
You know, Aaron, looking over this, one of the shockers for me is, out of all the residents, only 11% are saying they're not using our trails. I mean, we have
That's a good point.
89% of our residents that took the survey saying they're out there using the trails in some fashion.
In some
That kind
fashion.
of surprised me, the high use.
Yeah, I agree. Traveling to a park, that, people use them more for that than traveling to school. And then, traveling elsewhere is about the same breakout. So maybe that's to a friend's house, maybe that's to the library, maybe that's more about connector, you're going to Smith's or something. But again, different ways that people are using our trails. But you're right, Kurt, a significant number said they are using them, so. Then we asked some open space question. So we wanted to know, if you lived in an open space subdivision, and we got a fairly close representation to what is accurate in our city. So 22%, said that they lived in an open space subdivision, and according to mayor's calculations, it's about 26% of our homes live in open space subdivisions. So we're a little underrepresented, but not by much. I was curious, based on if you live in an open space subdivision or not, does that change your answer to some of the open space questions? The only one that it did on was open space maintenance. So, open space maintenance didn't rate well overall, but if you live in an open space community, 29% of people said that we do a good or excellent job maintaining the natural vegetation. If you don't live in a community, it's 46%. So you see a 16% change, a 17% change between the two groups there.
Now, you said natural vegetation, so is it only looking at natural vegetation in open space, or what's?
Yeah, so the question, it's number 3 on the first page. It says, natural vegetation, open space maintenance. In my mind, Kurt, I don't think that people look at a park like Town Center that is technically open space and think of it as open space. I think they think of it as a park. So we try to distinguish between natural vegetation and parks as a whole. All right, the rest of these are just demographic, to kind of give us a feel again of, are we representative of our city as a whole? So, this is where do you live, and we use Alpine Highway and Timpanogos Highway as kind of our quadrants. Based on this, and then I compare it to precinct data, that we get from the county to see how representative we are. So we are underrepresented on this survey from the northeast portion, so think Viewpoint and then anybody along Alpine Highway there. We're underrepresented there, but that, and slightly overrepresented in the southeast portion, south of Timpanogos Highway, east of Alpine Highway.
I wonder if that's supposed to be southwest.
So on the bottom, yeah, that should
Oh,
be
oops.
southwest.
Yes,
Two
so, yes, 50% where it says southeast should actually be southwest. Thank you. Which again, so the northwest and the southwest, we seem to be fairly represented there. All right, and this is one we've asked for years. How long have you lived in Highland, and how long are you planning on living in Highland? So, it tends to be about a third, 0 to 10, if you combine those two categories, 10 to 20, and 20 plus years that people have lived here. But one cool thing that I always love to see is that 50% of our respondents want to live here the rest of their life, 20 years or the rest of their life. So they love Highland, which I think is a great thing.
And that's similar to previous years.
It
right?
is, yes. Those, the numbers might change slightly, but that trend holds.
Nicely done.
Thank you. So I will make some of those corrections. Please let me know if you have any additional questions, and we'll get this online shortly. And I guess there'll probably be a newsletter article too about it in July.
Well done. That's a lot of work putting that together, so thank the staff for manually inputting a lot more data than they did last year, as a percentage anyway. Okay. on to our event. Corinne?
I covered the button, there we go. All right, so we are in the thick of planning city events, trying to find ways to bring the community together, but not too close together, and try and unify and build up city morale at a time when we know many people are struggling. But keeping the current health situation in mind, we have been monitoring very carefully the things going on right now. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of background about what I've been doing over the last few months. I've met virtually multiple times with a couple different groups, with the Association of Civic Event Coordinators from around the state, representatives from the Utah County Health Department, as well as a task force with the league as we've worked to create guidelines that are now part of the phased guidelines for general public and business to maximize the public health and economic reactivation. So we are in version 4.6 of that document right now. On May 5th, we were on 4.1. So it's a constantly changing situation. About 25 pages of what we can and can't do and how to successfully do different things, from events to businesses to all those things. So for those who may not have been following the guidelines, I just wanted to give you kind of an outline of what, as the events, the guidelines that we have been given in ways that we can have events in this yellow or low risk category. These are some of the highlights that are that cause the most pause when we're planning our events. And we have to be able to have controlled entrance and exit points, and that is to maintain our ability to track attendance so that we can do contact tracing in the event that there is an outbreak or something following an event. We need to be able to contact everybody who was there, and we need to know where people were sitting. We need to make sure we have room for 6 feet between family groups if they're seated, such as a concert or movie in the park. And we need to be able to limit the number of people in a confined area so that they are able to self-space and provide adequate social distancing at all times. And we have to avoid congregation points, and as well as protect our employees, our volunteers, and any first responders that are there to provide support. We don't want to put any of them at unnecessary risk. So those are kind of those are the guidelines we've been working with, and we feel like we've been able to create kind of a mini fling that we will be able to do, about a 3-day event that will be much smaller than our usual fling, but we hope it will be a way to kind of unite the community and give people something to look forward to. So many of the events have been a small part of the fling in the past, but these are things that we feel like we can do and maintain those social distancing and contact tracing guidelines. And so we just kind of wanted to give you a little overview of what we're doing and answer any questions you've got. I know people are asking, is there going to be a fling? Because some of the cities around us, American Fork is going full speed ahead with Steel Days, and Alpine has completely canceled. So we're in the middle of the middle. So we've got some of our traditional events that are going to become virtual events, such as our baby celebration will look more like a photo contest. Our art show will look more like a chalk art contest that people do at their homes and submit their entries. The library is planning on hosting a Harry Potter party for the kids, and that will be a sign-up event. So many of the events we have to do pre-registration so that we can control the number of people in and out and the spacing, and just keep track of who is in attendance there. The Highland Games are kind of their own self-contained unit, and they had an event 2 weeks ago, and they felt like they were able to successfully maintain those health guidelines, and so they're going forward with their normal plan, but they have a small audience. It's mainly family members that were there to watch the previous competition, so we're working with them to make sure that we can provide the safety for them. There are a few things like the concert that we have booked, but we're not sure that it's gonna be able to happen. It will, as the guidelines continue to change, we are trying to be flexible. And the big question everybody asks is if we're gonna have fireworks, and we are planning on having fireworks. We're not encouraging people to congregate at Heritage Park as they have in the past, but to watch from home or from smaller groups spread around the city. They're fairly visible right there, so we want to be able to provide that unity and fun, but not have unnecessary risk, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
How are you gonna prevent them from congregating?
Well, part of it, we're not gonna have anything before. Usually there's the concert beforehand in the same park. There's not gonna be anything happening in the park before then. If they choose to come, there won't be, the restrooms and things like that are usually set up for a large group. We won't have any of those facilities, the light towers, anything like that makes it look like they should come there. If they choose to go to the park is open, and we would ask that they maintain, we'll have signs for social distancing throughout every event, but we're not doing anything additional to draw people to the park beforehand, so.
Are you talking about closing the restrooms?
Well, usually we bring in
Oh, porta
porta
potties.
potties,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But, under the yellow, low-risk guidelines, no one in the state is authorizing any, mass gathering permits, and so we can't have a group over 1,000 people together anyway, so we're not gonna attempt that at that park, so,
Unless you're protesting.
yes, then by all means.
So Curtis, as what Councilman Smith brought up, we have the Mountain Ridge field also. I mean, I'm just trying to think where the fireworks could be set off. If I stayed at my home, I probably wouldn't be able to enjoy the fireworks because I'm a little bit of a distance. I'm thinking maybe some of our residents will feel they're a distance away from that, so they're gonna try to come a little closer. I know in some parks, they went and put like circles with X's saying this is where you can sit. I don't know if we could, utilize the Mountain Ridge. Maybe we could talk to the local stake center there to say, hey, can we, on this night of the fireworks park, but maybe we have them come into the field and set up that we could put X's there. I'm just trying to look for options as people try to gather, but we want to try to get them to kind of stay out and, to kind of keep their distance.
Yes, and we've looked at possibly even launching them from the high school, just because there's a broader view, so if you guys have a suggestion of a better spot to launch.
I thought Mountain Ridge was banned from fireworks.
The Mountain Ridge field is.
Yeah, okay. Just curious.
Yes, so we will.
So you are considering maybe trying to move them to Lone Peak High School where you feel like people might be able to gather around a little bit easier around the Lone Peak area?
Yes, so if anybody has a suggestion of a better elevation.
See, if it was Lone Peak, all of our residents would have to travel to that area.
Somewhere central, yeah.
Because that's not, that's definitely not central. It's on their
On the
farthest
edge.
corner and there's no
Yeah.
homes there.
Yeah.
Except for maybe,
Graduation did it.
I should say somewhere visible.
did they?
not
And how'd that
necessarily
work
central.
out?
I could see it from my house. That's me. I don't know how. You might ask residents if they were able to enjoy the.
Oh, the high school ones? Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable idea. It's pretty close to Highland Glen Park, though. Things are banned there.
We will keep working on that one.
The fire department will be, wherever we have it, our trusty fire department will be there.
So do you make all of these plans assuming that we're still gonna be in yellow, or do you make any contingencies, thinking that we might switch to green, or we just like assume everything's yellow and play it conservatively?
At this point, the lead time to book some of the entertainment and register like vendors and things like that, we kept kind of kicking the can down the road 2 weeks at a time, thinking that maybe we'd be a little more in the clear. There are things we can add if we do go to green, but at this point, we're about 6 weeks out, and so it's,
The hard part is getting money.
yeah,
Because we use the magazine as a fundraiser. And
yeah, and we opted not
the
to do the magazine.
So
this
let's
year.
talk about,
visibility.
as the mayor's brought up funding, let's kind of go through. Last year, I think we spent $66,000 on the fling. I think we only have budgeted 50, but we had a lot of fundraising that came in that helped augment. If it has the magazine, we had vendors that came in. What are you estimating what your expenses are gonna be and what your be able to generate, so what's our actual cost for the fling? Because last year it was $16,000, so I'm kind of curious what we're gonna, I'm just saying the net together.
Yeah, so this time, luckily, these smaller events are considerably less expensive than a lot of the other things. The bulk of the money that is spent is usually that Saturday for the entertainment, the stage rental, the sound company, and we're not doing any of that. So that right there will save us about $20,000. I think conservatively, and we already do have a couple big sponsors that have committed, I think conservatively we'll be well within our, we probably can do the whole thing under the 16,000 and not, we have additional at least another 7,000 committed already for sponsors, but I'm still hearing back from some. There were many that were hesitant to commit until they saw a plan. So it's been a little back and forth, but we have tried to offer them additional opportunities to advertise at other events throughout the rest of the year, like the pumpkin walk and things like that, assuming we're able to go forward with those. Trying to give them other things because we are not doing the magazine. So that has been another reason that we've scaled way back because of the funding.
Because the council's been involved, at the different stages of the fling, where do you see the council would be interacting with those in the city? The only thing I can see, we could be at certain things here, but where do we see that as a council you'd recommend that we'd be there to kind of help support and interact?
I think because the events are smaller, I would love to see you guys maybe one go to, the horseshoe tournament and one go to the disc golf tournament, and be there kind of as a liaison to the city. The parade is still kind of up in the air as far as what format we can have. That is another one that we can't do in yellow, but something will happen that is a parade, and it might just be another, one of our wonderful drive-by for the nursing homes, or we're also looking at a classic car cruise-in type parade. So we for sure would love to have you guys have an entry or multiple entries in those. And then, the rest will kind of be, we'll have to kind of play it by ear. We might, if you guys are willing, film little shorts that you guys could talk, that we can post on our social media, inviting people out to things, so you can connect with people, even though you can't necessarily talk to them in person, but we would love to have that connection that a lot of people are really missing right now.
We could still do a dunk tank.
I was thinking the exact same thing, a dunk tank.
A dunk tank?
You could have there's enough distance to do a dunk tank.
We'll
Make
sell
it
tickets
longer
to
reduce
fund
the
it.
accuracy, right?
I love it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering why you couldn't do, the Arts Council still couldn't do like their art show. Seems like if you had a gatekeeper and things and only let, kind of limit the number of people that are in there at the same time, that you could do that.
Yeah, that decision was from the Arts Council themselves. I think a big part of it was a lot of their volunteers are in high-risk categories, but we have looked at other ways, possibly setting it up here in City Hall, even, where we usually have the art installation. We could switch that for the art show. So we are still open to that. I will continue working with them because it is a need.
This is a hit for the Arts Council because this is also a big fundraiser. They usually have their auction going on. This is kind of their biggest fundraiser of the year. So the Arts Council is going to take a hit.
Yeah, we've also looked at possibly setting it up in a park so that they were concerned about the enclosed areas congregating at the community center. So we are still working on those options, so I would love to see it still happen.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice. If you try to do it in the park, though, it's a guaranteed rainstorm.
Wind and rain, right?
Yeah.
So, Scott, have you been doing some of your painting? Scott, the last couple of years, has actually contributed or, had some drawings in there which have been very, very nice. So have you kind of been doing some?
I've got 2 new ones that I want to
Okay,
show.
that's good to know.
Okay.
Conflict of interest.
Corinne, I think this looks great, and I'm just grateful for how you've had to roll with the punches and try and figure this all out. So I just commend you on what you've come up with so far.
Thank
I'm sad that the 5K won't be happening, but I think Catch the Councilwoman, would very much be caught.
We'll save it for next year.
Yeah.
I love it. We had looked at a virtual 5K or fun run, but the feedback I've gotten, I've had some questions come from the public and offered them that option, and they declined. They said, no, we wouldn't do it unless it was in person, and that's,
Yeah, people
yeah,
don't do
we'll have to hold
virtual.
off on that one, so, yeah.
I think, are there other communities doing this drive-by parade, and are they getting floats? I mean, I could see if we expand our area we're gonna travel in, there might be some, areas we might be able to go down and have a little drive-by parade, and yet some people still feel that, venue, or if you wanna say the excitement of having a parade, because that's gonna be something that they're gonna miss this community, during the community this year, so.
South Jordan had an activity they called Floats and Floats. And you started at City Hall, and there was a food truck there that was passing out root beer floats that was paid for by the city. And then they drove past the parade entries, so the floats, and they had, I think, emergency response vehicles and sponsor floats and a band, things like that. And people drove past the floats, and it wasn't
They were
super long, but
stationary.
it was a fun activity. And I don't know if you guys have noticed the same thing, but people are pretty desperate for entertainment, and so things they might not have spent time on in the past, they're willing to go do, just because it's something different and a chance to get out, and so.
I loved Cedar Hills, the classic car parade. I thought that was a great idea.
But I do, so I've been watching, there's some communities, like when some of the youth might have come back from an LDS mission, they were lining the road as they were coming home, and so to me, it's kind of like maybe what we could get out there as a parade, if we let the communities know we'll be in these areas coming in, we might be surprised who the kids might come out, and if we have a fire truck, and have it going, it might be surprising what we might be able to get as a drive-by parade.
Yeah, we'll look at that, and maybe even split it up. I know some of the other cities have done like mini parades that it's kind of a repetition, 2 or 3 of the same group will go out, and they have maps, they go into different communities, so everybody's seeing basically the same parade, but simultaneously, so. We have not ruled anything out on the parade front at this point. So feel free to send me your ideas or suggestions, or if you've seen something work well somewhere, we would love to keep people as engaged as possible. And I know the physical health and the mental well-being balance for this time of isolation is a struggle for a lot of people, so we're trying to find a happy medium and keep our city strong, so. So
are you gonna sponsor any service projects?
We are. I realized I left that off after I finished this. The youth council is doing, they were going to do a school and book drive, a school supply drive, but we've kind of shied away from collecting items as much. We are planning to have a food drive as part of the parade, possibly. We were going to do a food drop and then have people drive by if we do a drive-by parade. So a food drive for sure. I understand that local stakes here have been assigned certain weeks to donate to the food pantry, and that was through the end of June. And so we're going to pick up with that with our parade chair. We are working on other lower contact service projects, just because in the past it's been a lot of assembling things in person. So we are working on that. So if you have a service idea that we have not touched on before, I would love suggestions, or if you know of a group that is in need, we would love to work on that. So, thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Corinne. Thanks for all you do. All
Corinne,
right,
do you want to plug your movie on Saturday real quick?
Oh,
Yes, so this Friday, we are having our first drive-in movie, and it's kind of a test run to see how well we can keep everybody social distance. It's a family movie. We're showing The Sandlot.
filmed in Utah, I believe.
Yes, Salt Lake, we love it. And the gate opens at Mountain Ridge Park at 8:30. There will be some food trucks spread out, and the movie will start at dark, which will be probably about 9:30, so we would love to have you come. We are asking that people pre-register, so the link to pre-register through Eventbrite is on the city Facebook page and the city website. If you have not pre-registered and want to still come, please come a little bit early. We'll have some on-site registration, just because we do have to keep track for contact tracing, just to make sure we know who's there. We need to get hold of you.
So if a council person's even just gonna stop by to see the event, you want us to sign up so you can contact trace us, correct?
Yes, or we'll have, our youth council will be there with clipboards, and they'll take your name and a contact method. So if you're not sure if you're gonna come and decide to at the last minute, don't let that be a reason not to come. We have a backup plan, but if you know for sure you're gonna come, please register.
So the food trucks are there, are they open to anyone, not
Yes.
just the movie people?
Yes, anybody can stop by. We'll have Kona Ice, Auntie Anne's pretzels, and slice of pizza. So, perfect, thank you.
Next item, consent items, there are 4. Item A is approval of meeting minutes. Item B is the request by COPEC to amend section 34109 of the Development Code related to accessory buildings. Item C is a Boyer Ridgeview final plat approval. And the last item is D, a resolution to update the fireworks restrictions. Do we want to pull any of those?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 3B and item 3D. I'd just like to make a comment on 3C. I'm not pulling it, but when we vote on that, I need to recuse myself from that as I'm a member of the governing board of the USDC. Just a little side comment. I do support it because as this development happens, as you know, the money for the development or the land sale goes into the sustainability fund, which benefits the disabled at the USDC as well as throughout the state. So I think it has kind of a noble purpose behind it. But as a member of the governing board, I will recuse myself from voting on that item.
Okay, so is there a motion for A and C?
I move that we approve consent item number 3A and 3C.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made by Kurt, seconded by Kim. Are we ready to vote, or do we want to do voice? Let's do voice on this. So, starting with Tim. Kim.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Brittany. And Scott, just on A.
Oh, you want me to talk about A?
Just vote on A. Yes or no?
Oh, yes, on A. Okay, I'm sorry.
Because you can, sorry.
Yeah, I can't vote on C, yeah.
Okay. Now, let's go to item B.
I just brought this up and wanted to pull it just to discuss a little bit more. When I read through this, I thought it was pretty consistent with what we decided on 2 weeks ago. However, if you look at it carefully, there's just a little bit of confusion. And, you know, the Planning Commission basically said the minimum setback for these large buildings, and we decided you had to have 2 acres before we do that, would be 60 feet for the accessory building in the rear, 30 on the side. Now, that's discussed in 2B2. And then as you go down into 3B, it talks about if you go above 25 feet in the height, and we allow up to 35 feet, which we discussed and agreed on, that there's another 2 feet for each foot you go up, which is another 20 feet if you go the full 10 feet. Now, I'm confused on whether that's based on the 10-foot setback that we talk about in 4C, or whether that's on top of the minimum of 30 and 60, because that would give you a setback of 50 on the side and 80 in the back, and I don't think that was ever part of the discussion that I understood. It seems like it should be based on the 10-foot, so that, you know, your setback on the side is 30 feet and your setback on the rear is 60 feet. And Mr. Cole brought that up in his comments, but it's kind of hard to interpret what was meant here. Tara, can you explain? And Rob, I think you helped write this, because I don't think we ever meant to have 80 and 50-foot setbacks.
I guess the council, really, their opinion matters at this point, right? Rob can talk
Yeah,
about
well, but he wrote the,
yes,
he
but
took what we were talking about and wrote it. So I'd like to understand what they meant here, because I think it's really confusing. Yeah.
So I think it's, my understanding, and I think what was reflected in the minutes, was that it would apply on top of it. However, if the council would like that not to, I have language that would do that. I think the recommendation from Tara is, we say that the setbacks, that additional 2 feet for 1 foot in height, apply to the base, the normal setbacks that are required, and then say, we don't add on to the height, or, sorry, if the setback's required because of the size.
So you're really suggesting that people, if they have the maximum, would have a 50-foot setback on the side and 80 in the back? Because that's not what the planning commission suggested, and that's what I didn't understand when I came.
That was our understanding in looking at the minutes of what the draft motion was. Based on the minutes, is we basically mirrored the code based on the draft motion. So if, you know, if that, from our perspective, the council intent was to increase the setback if you went higher than 25 feet from
But
the 30
my
and the
question is
60.
where was the base? Was the base at 10 feet or 30 feet?
The
And-
base was 30 because the building would be above 5%. That was our understanding.
Okay, who made that motion?
Well,
You did, I believe.
I did. Well, that's not what I meant.
Okay.
At all.
We're just going
Yeah.
off with the draft.
So I guess it comes back to the council. What do you want to do at this point? Do you want the base to be 30 when you're raising the height above 25, or you want the base to be 10?
And if I may, council, if you are gonna do the base of the 10, there's additional setbacks in number 4. So I'd make sure you reference that specific section. So such as a side yard setback of 20 feet, and then there's additional setbacks on easements and trails.
So the council are free to do what
Whatever
they
you
want at this point. You wrote one that you felt reflected the discussion, and if you listen to it, I think that interpretation is valid. On the other hand, having been in it, I tend not to have an opinion because I can't vote.
That's not what I meant, but that's the way it came across.
But I guess it's up to the council as to what they would like to do on that regard.
So, help me understand, so what Scott's bringing up, are we saying that if they're on a 1-acre lot and they're building 7% garage, they start at 10 feet, then they can go up to 25 feet, but the only way they can go up to 35 feet is to be on a 2
acres, which I
acres or
agree with.
larger, correct?
Yeah.
So let me clarify. There are two separate issues here. There is a size increase and there is a height increase. There are minimum standards that say, normally, if you are under 2 acres, you're limited to 5% of your lot and 25 feet. And then there's normal setbacks that apply to that. Then we're saying there are two separate ways that you can change those, and each of those have additional setbacks. And that's where the clarification that we're, I guess, asking council to weigh in on. If you increase the size, there's now a new minimum setback of 60 feet from the back and 30 feet from each side. And then if you just do the height, it's the 2 feet for each 1 foot. The question is, do you want those to stack on top of each other or not? If that makes sense. If someone wants to do just a height increase, then it's just 2 feet additional setbacks for each 1 foot in height. If someone just does a size, there's that new minimum. If someone does both, does it the new minimum, and then you add the 2 feet per 1 foot.
That was a really good way to frame it. That
You can
makes it
do
clear
it
to me.
either way. You can just say, no, we're only adding 2 feet for 1 foot above the normal base, not the increased setback for the size, or we just apply it to whatever the setbacks are otherwise.
You know, if you look, so you come back, you're saying we come back, they're getting larger in size, they have to be 30 feet. Now they're gonna go larger in height, we're saying they gotta start pushing back to the side again because they're starting to go higher. I would tend, in this code, to favor more of, we do both. That, hey, we're gonna have, because their size, we're at 30. Once you start to go larger, then you have to kind of scoot back a little bit more because it's starting to go higher. Because I'm just looking at buildings that might only be 10 or 20 feet, and I'm going, when they're 25 feet, that's still pretty tall. And so, you know, but once they start going taller, you don't want, if you're the house next to it, you want to try to not squeeze as they go higher.
Yeah, but at the same time, 50-foot and 80-foot setbacks are gonna prohibit anybody from doing this to a large degree.
What is the current formula? The current formula is 25-foot maximum height with a 10-foot setback for a residential home.
Right.
Correct.
Not for an out
For,
Oh, for the
building.
accessory too.
Okay, so we're
Accessory
saying,
and 5%. So original, right now is 5% of the lot,
right,
10-foot
Well-
setback at 25 feet.
so at this particular
In this
formula,
zone.
what we're saying is 10 feet plus 2 feet for every increase in 1 foot, is that what it is?
Right.
So this particular would be 30, this would be a 30-foot setback?
Yes.
So why is he saying 50 feet?
Because if you look at 3B, it's not 3B, it's 2. At the bottom there, it says the minimum has to be 30 and 60, and so they're putting the extra height, adding 2 feet on both sides. Do you see
So
what I
you're
mean?
saying he's starting at 30?
You're starting at 30 and at 60, and then you're adding, if you go up 10
Well,
more
why are we
feet.
starting at 30 if the setback's 10?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't know, because I remember it being at 10, and then we just went up to.
No, I remember it
30.
being, we put it at 30, I remember that, but
Well, because we put it at 30 because we increased the size from 5% to 7%, and so it's also a 2-acre lot. So
right.
bigger lot, bigger setbacks, so that's why we put it at 30 feet, and then we put additional 2 feet for every foot if they want to increase the height also.
So that puts him at 50.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we have to determine if that's reasonable in practical application as opposed to just a formula on the page.
Right.
So,
yeah, there was 2 ways the council reached 30. One was the height. If you just do the height, you get up to 30 setbacks. If you just do the size, you get to 30-foot setbacks. Question is, if you do both, should that increase to 50 or should that stay at 30? And I'll also say, to Tara's point, the minimum setback may be slightly higher than 10, and there's certain limited circumstances, so just to that point. So the
Yeah, well,
question is,
I'm-
do you want them to stack to 50 or say the maximum basically will be 30?
Well, I made the motion, and I did not intend for the setback on a 35-foot building to be 50 and 80. I think that's not reasonable.
I just think we
Yeah.
should, I think we should calculate, and I don't know, maybe Todd could help us, but
I thought Tim made the motion.
Yeah, Tim made the motion and Scott, you seconded it.
Yeah.
I'm
You made
just-
the
I mean,
motion
what I'm trying,
Yeah.
no, it was you.
No, you
No,
made it.
No,
I'm
you,
just-
you,
I'm just
you made,
kidding,
you
I'm
made the
just
motion.
kidding. So,
Go ahead.
I just want to keep the angle consistent. So if it's 10 foot away for a 25-foot building, and we increase the height, then we have to increase the distance. If we keep if we keep the angle consistent, and then that would be consistent with what we're trying to accomplish for the view shed, correct? And we don't want the building to get in the way or impede the view of the neighbors. Isn't that what we're trying to accomplish? So I guess it would have to be some sort of calculation using geometry where the angle is consistent with. Does that
I
make
very
sense?
clearly voted no on geometry.
You absolutely did. You did. So let's say trigonometry. So, or some sort of math. So am I thinking too much into this, putting too much into this, or too much thought, or?
So
does
the way
anyone-
it's worded is the council believed that increasing over 5%, you needed to be 30 feet and 60 feet. Is that still the case?
Well, it's 30 feet plus 2 feet for every foot increase in
Well,
height.
that is building
That's what
that's
I
20,
seconded.
that,
Yeah.
that's a building at 25 feet. If it's over 75, over the 5%, the side yard setbacks were 30 and the rear was 60. Is that still what the council wants?
So, okay, so if the garage is under 5%, they can be at the 10 feet. If
Correct.
they're over the 5%, up to 7, that's what you're saying goes to the
Correct.
30 feet.
And we gotta
Correct.
remember also, this is over 2 acres. And so, I mean, this isn't a 1-acre lot where you're cutting it off. This is 2 acres and above, so they have that room to have greater setbacks.
Is this only applying to 2 acres, or is this applying to,
This is the 2 acres or bigger.
Only 2 acres or more can get both the size and the height increased.
What is the lot size?
His lot size is just under 3 acres.
I was gonna say, I thought it was around 3.
But we set the minimum of 10 or 2 acres before you could
But
build
we
it
need-
that bigger.
But we need to make sure we make something that works for everybody, not just that we're tailoring for Mr. Peck.
Okay, now, so I'm just looking at, okay, at number 2, so under section 3-4109, accessory buildings, 2 size. Accessory buildings should not cover more than 5% of the total gross lot area, except as provided below. Accessory buildings may cover up to 7% of the lot if they follow the following requirements. And so that requirement is they have to be 60 feet from the back and 30 feet from the size on at least on a 2-acre lot. Okay, so that's only on a 2-acre lot. A 2-acre lot's gonna be a little bit larger, and they should have a little more space to adjust this. I want you to just think, and I guess I always look at visual, I'm a visual person. As I go down 10400, we have a new barn that's going up there right on 10400. That sits 10 foot off the lot. There's a 3.5-acre lot right next to it, and I know it's for sale, and they've struggled a little bit because that buildings went in, that some are saying they've now lost a little bit of their view, because it's right there at the 10 feet.
They've absolutely lost their view.
So I'm just, and that, because they'll probably be able to put 2 or 3 lots in there, I'm just saying. So that's my concern is, as we go larger, this isn't just a smaller 1,800 square foot garage, this is a larger garage that is, how large did we decide that barn is going in? Is it 8,000 or 10?
It's 10.
It's 10?
Well, he wanted 10, but wasn't it limited to 8?
No, we're talking about something else.
We're talking about the barn that's on 10400.
Okay, got it.
And I think, what's the height on that one? Is that 28 feet, Nathan, on that open animal shelter that they claim
Yeah,
it is?
so it's 27 feet, 2 inches.
So I'm just trying to say, if you're there and you're right next to that lot, it really will take away your view shed. You know, it's right up against the lot, tall and long. So that's what I'm just trying to prevent.
But at the same time, people, do we have a limit on the height of houses? 35 feet. So if somebody build a 35-foot house there, it'd affect your viewscape too.
Correct, but how far is their side yards? One could be 10, the next one has to be 15, so you have 25 feet.
Yeah, but if we build a big house like that, we don't insist that they're 30 feet and 60 feet, do we?
The rear's 30 feet, sides are 15.
15
Typical,
So that's 30 feet. That's,
no,
so,
15 both sides, each side.
yeah, so
Minimum,
that's 30 in between.
yes, 30 in between structures.
So, as our code is, you could build this huge house at 35 feet, do it 15 from both sides. But our accessory lots, now we're saying have to be 50 and 80 if you go up to 35 feet. So I don't understand the discrepancy, and that's not what I understood from our discussion. I thought it was based on 10 foot going up to maximum of 30. 30 and 60, because that's what the planning commission said. It was based on the planning commission discussion.
I think the planning commission still recommends staying at 5%.
No, they supported.
Did they support the
They
7?
voted 4 to 2 and supported the
Yeah, they
10,000
supported-
square
they
foot as
supported
well,
10.
and we cut that back.
Yeah, they supported the 8%,
They supported, 8% with no cap,
no cap.
Right.
and we supported 7 with a cap at 8.
The planning commission's draft was also not clear either way.
Right.
Their ordinance, I mean, what they proposed was basically the same of, if you increase beyond 5 up to 8, you'd go to a 60-foot rear and 30-foot side. Then they have the same height calculation of 2 feet for each 1 foot. But that's all it says. It doesn't say whether or not it would apply on top of the building one or not. So this is good for us to clarify either way. It has to be clarified for this ordinance to be adopted or not.
So if we, not saying you're doing this, but if you went with just the height and said it doesn't, the 30, 60 doesn't matter, then you would take 2B2 out and just say you would conform to the current setbacks as defined, or you would just say the 2-for-1. Right, you would use the same 2-for-1. You'd have 10 feet plus 2-for-1.
Which is what I understood from the planning commission in our discussion.
So that's your choice, though. You can make it the same. Nathan, do you know offhand how wide the average, 2-acre lot? What's the frontage on that, or the width on a typical, on R-140, our minimum frontage is
In R-140,
135.
it's 130.
130?
Yeah, 130. 110 on a R120, yeah.
So if you had an R140 where it was 130 and really deep to get your 2 acres, if you had 50-foot setbacks on the side, you could have a minimum 30-foot wide building.
Yeah, we have to look, so when we're talking about homes, Scott, being 25 feet or 35 feet, the homes are usually elongated in the front. They're not, these sheds or these garages are not gonna go, they're not gonna go on the frontage, they're gonna go depth. And that's why I get nervous in not having it pulled from the side, is that's your view shed. If you wanna say out of your backyard or your family room, some have family rooms in the front yard, but a lot have them in the back. That's where you can kind of start blocking, because you've put an accessory building that's now 35 feet, that can be 8,000 square feet. You really start to.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but, we just talked about the frontage on an acre property at 130, right? So is the frontage on a 2 acre, is that 260?
It varies. It can go deep, it can go wide.
Right.
It can have a weird shape like,
Like his has.
Yeah, see, Peck starts out, I think, he was saying like 150. I don't know if he's meeting exactly 130, but he might be 150, but he goes back in and then widens out.
But I don't think you should have the setback so big on accessory buildings, you can't put a house in there. I mean, that's, if you're talking about, if you had a square 2 acre thing, okay? So the frontage is 260, you're taking out 100 feet on the side for your accessory building just to be setbacks, and then you gotta put a house and a building in there. I mean, think through it. You have 130 feet to build your house and the building. I don't know. It just seems excessive to me on that, and I don't think that's the intent
Well,
I understood from
I
our
actually
discussion.
voted against this because I think an 8,000 square foot building is excessive on that. I'm just saying, I think anyone building that large, we're gonna have very few, I don't think we're gonna have a lot of individuals come and build an 8,000 square foot garage, but those who do, they will be large. These are gonna be large buildings.
So is there,
Didn't we take that language from something that Alpine had done?
Yeah, we did. So Alpine does the same thing where it's 25, and if they want to go up to 35, then they do 2 feet for every foot they go up. I don't know their setbacks, though.
But I don't believe Alpine has the same size increase, which is, we're doubling up twice is the issue. We have
If you
two
wanted to be
setback increases.
consistent with the home is 15 and 15. I mean, if, Scott, when you're saying they could be 30 feet by each other, that would kind of be the consistency of a home. Instead of being 10, it would be 15 is what the home has to be from the side setback. Does that make sense?
So we can, there's an easy, we can approve it as written, which would increase the setbacks if someone did both size and height to 50 and 80. We can also append language to 3B that says, just to the end of it, from the setbacks required by subsection 4, they shall not increase setbacks required by subsection 2. So then you just have an alternate. You either, if you're doing size, you go up to 30 and 60. If you're doing height as well, it increases, but you're still going to be hitting up to 30 and 60 unless, something otherwise strange happens.
is there,
What if you eliminated two, the minimum, and just tweaked your baseline setbacks in 4, and then kept your same formula in 3?
You could do that. There are, under 4, there's the 10-foot setbacks, which are normal. There's, I believe, a couple that are higher than that.
Yeah, so, there's a 20-foot for, the parkway, and there's also a trail. You have to be 10 feet from any kind of trail or other easements. So you'll see on some plats some conservation easements that might be further than 10 feet. And then there's also, let me look. And then the side street, 20 feet. So there's some additional, more than 10.
What if we just kept the setbacks at 30 and 60, and for height, just did 1 foot for every 1 foot of height.
Well, then they're going to the 50 and 80.
So it'd be 40 and 70,
Oh, you're saying 1 foot for each, make
Uh-huh.
it 40 and 70?
yeah. I think that's a good compromise.
Do you want to make that a motion?
Oh, shoot.
What do you think, Kurt?
I voted no when this originally came up, and I'm good. Also, I haven't changed my mind, so I'm still voting no on the 8,000 square foot.
What do you think the maximum should be?
And I like what Kim's actually saying, where you're, because I agree, the only concern is when you talk 30 feet, that's only on a 2 acre lot, they should be okay being 30 feet. When, I know you're worried about the home, if they're only 130 feet on the frontage, they'll be a super deep lot. You know what I mean? It would be way, more than 600 feet deep. And so I think we're gonna be okay. I don't think a lot of the 2 acre lots are gonna be just 130 feet, so I think they should have some.
260,
That's a lot?
if it was square, whatever.
Yeah, if it'd be 260 by, whatever it might be, if it goes back, 300 feet.
But what is it he's able to do if we vote no? He says he's gonna build a breezeway and make it an attached building. Is there a limitation on the square footage if he does that?
No,
So he could build a 20,000 square foot garage if he had the room,
yeah.
so I'm just not sure what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to preserve view shed, we're trying to preserve, we're trying to prohibit people from coming in and building these massive structures in addition to their homes. And we're trying to prohibit businesses from coming in and utilizing those structures. But if all they have to do is use that rule and they can circumvent what we're trying to accomplish and build whatever they want as long as there's some sort of a breezeway.
Maybe we need to get rid of that rule then and close the loophole of him being able to do that.
Because even said, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. If you, basically, in a very nice way, he said, if you don't give me what I want or some sort of reasonable compromise, reasonable to him, then I'm just gonna attach it and do whatever the heck I want.
We can't just do this for Cole, though. We have to do something that
For the
makes
city.
sense for everybody.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But I think Tim's bringing up something, I thought we already did something just recently as a city, that we did say it was like it had to be within 10 to 15 feet of the house, or,
It's 6 feet.
Yeah, so it's
6 feet
10
wide.
feet from the house and 6 feet wide.
so I mean, what we're saying is they have to at least have it within 10 feet of the home.
And what's the definition of a breezeway? We said you can't do a subterranean
We added a
breezeway.
width.
Pardon me?
We added the width to breezeway.
So is it just a sidewalk with a cover over it, or what is it?
Common roof line and foundation,
Common roof?
Has
line?
to hook
and
to the home.
foundation.
Is it mirroring the house's roof line? Is that what you're saying is common roof line?
It just says common roof line, so yeah, the house's roof line, how I would interpret it.
So, I'm gonna say something real quick. I will compromise and agree with Kim.
I will compromise and agree with Kim.
Do you want to make that motion, Scott, since you're really good at making that and I won't blender it?
No, I'll let you make it. since
Oh,
you- Okay.
God.
Well, I think it's, pretty clear.
So you're just gonna change number 3, where it says for increase by 2 feet, just increase by 1.
It's 3B3. And so,
3B,
But are we gonna limit the size?
or at 8,000
Weird.
foot, that was after a long discussion.
Okay.
But all you have to do is change 3B3 from 2 feet to 1 foot.
okay, so I'd like
Ah.
to make a motion to approve consent item, was it
3B,
3D,
B.
B, 3B?
Can I put you on pause for just a
Yeah.
second? So what we're agreeing to then is if you go with the 5% size, which if it's 3 acres, that could be almost 7,000 square feet, then you can build your building, 10 feet,
No, 30.
no,
So
no,
we're
no,
gonna keep with
no.
30 feet and 60 feet?
Yeah, but if you stay with the 5%,
Oh,
then what you're saying is you could, for a 3-acre lot, you could create a 7,000 square foot building roughly, and have the setback start on the side at 10 and go 1 for 1. So then you would be 20.
You just
With
threw
a
a
very
wrench in that.
I
Yeah.
did, because
That was good.
It may not have been what you intended.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just the tough one. Or you could say that, here's another option you could say is, if you go with, I think like Monty Hall, remember the behind door number, if you go with door number 1, which is the going to 7%, then your setbacks are 30-60.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to do the 2 for 1 for height. Or if you do that, then you go above 25 feet, then you would add another section there, Rob, right? To say plus, so you have item 2 where it says it's a minimum of 60 and 30 plus an additional 1 foot for every 1 foot in height over the 30 and 60 if you go over 25.
Yeah, but they have to be on a minimum, I guess if they did stay under 5%, they could be doing that.
Then if they stay under 5%, then as is,
Just has to be 30-60?
it has, no, if they stay under 5%, then your 2 for 1 goes into play. It's written right now that it's 2 for 1, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If you go over 25 feet,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of anything.
So
if you wanted the 1 for 1 to apply just to the 7%, then you could just put it right there.
And then you're saying 2 for 1 if it's under,
If you're in the 5% range, then it's 2 for 1 if you want to go above 25 with the existing minimum setbacks.
So I appreciate what the mayor is saying, but I think we're making it really complex. I'm wondering if we shouldn't just make a motion on this to continue it with kind of a consensus on the things we like and rewrite this, because I think it's getting really confusing and complex. I mean, there's certain things we can agree on. Yeah, you can go up to 35 feet. I think we've agreed on that. Yeah, you can have a building as big as 8,000. Yes, you can have minimum of 30 and 60 setbacks, but what we need to do is kind of give direction on the formula. I mean, we can use the mayor's ideas here, or your ideas, or whatever, but I'm wondering if we should just continue this and see if we can't hammer out some of the wording in this, because I think it's really confusing, and if we try to make it in motion, it gets more confusing. That's my opinion, anyway. So I'd like to move that we continue consent item 3B with...
And ask Rob to draft what he thinks we talked about?
Yeah, well, and
You need to give
I
us
think we can
some
give you some
direction.
pretty clear direction here, about what I think a consensus is, and maybe just rewrite this so it seems,
I am not clear on what the consensus was from the council.
well, but I'm making the motion, then we can maybe present our consensus.
Yeah.
Would that be reasonable? So that's my motion, that we continue this with direction to the staff on what we'd like to see written.
And then what is the consensus?
well, and then I mean, do we need to come up with a consensus right now, or is this just something that we want to?
Well, I think we need to give direction to the staff.
Okay.
So my feeling is the following. I'll just state what I think. I think you can go from 25 to 35 feet, and I did like the formula where for every foot you go up, you widen your setbacks by 2 feet. I think the discussion is where does that setback start? And so I think we need to come up on a consensus on that. I think after beating this to death last city council, I think the consensus was, it was the mayor's suggestion that we have 8,000 square feet maximum. So I support that. I think where we have problems is how big the setback is that we add the 2 for 1 to. And so I think we just need to come to a consensus. Is it 10 feet? Is it 20 feet? Is it 30 feet? I think somehow we ought to be able to come to a consensus. Does that make sense? Because that's the hang-up on this, is how big are the setbacks as you get this bigger building?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
question is, when do you want that formula?
To
If
apply.
it's the 2-for-1, or if it's a 1-for-1,
Do you want
what
the
do you
ca-
want, what do you want the base that then starts
So
applying
that's,
to?
so your 5%, if they build the 5% or under, right now, we're understanding the setbacks is 10 feet? Is that,
That's the way it's
That's
written.
what
okay,
current code is.
so
That's the
as long as they
parkway.
stay under 5%, if they go up to 7%, maybe what you do is you have that setback kick in at a certain square foot. You can say, upon them exceeding, 3,000 square feet, they now need to go to 30 feet side setback. Does that, and that way it triggers when that side setback kicks in.
But I thought the setback triggered on the height of the building. Yeah.
It says here, all accessories with a minimum of 30 feet.
So he's just saying, if you come up with some size, then you can say, all right, if you're above this side, then instead of having a 10-foot minimum setback, now you have a 20
Or,
plus
correct.
the height thing, or a 30 plus the height thing. That seems like a reasonable thing to me, and
I'm just saying that gets us where, if a person's reading it, you want the resident, when they're reading it, to understand at what point does it kick in and when, so they can start doing, if they want to go to a bigger one, they know they gotta do the side setbacks, or if they stay under 3,000 square feet, they can have the smaller setbacks.
so you're saying whatever, if you're in the 5% zone or a 7% zone, it
Correct.
doesn't matter that your side setback is 10 unless your building is bigger than X.
Yeah, and that
And
X
then,
is,
then if it's bigger than X, it's
goes to
Y.
30, and then once you go
And then-
higher, then it starts to go, maybe it's
So-
1-for-1.
What is X?
I would say somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 square feet. And I'm only using my garage that's 1,800, because I'm just trying to picture
So you're
the,
saying 3,000 square feet, then we go to the new formula.
yeah. I think it would give the person reading it, understanding of the staff, to understand when it kicks in.
And would you go to 30 or 20?
That's,
That's a, because if you went 20 and then did the additional 20 for height,
Correct.
you'd end up at 40.
and that, I'm okay trying to help that formula come together with what the mayor's saying is, if you go up, once you hit 3,000 square feet, you gotta have a 20 yard, or 20-foot setback,
Minimum.
minimum. Once you go height,
Then you add 2-for-1.
2-for-1.
So you're saying the maximum of 40 on the side, and what's your back setback then?
I don't know if really the 60 feet should not still maybe play.
So that'd just be 60.
So what is your
period.
base though for the back?
Say that one more time, Scott?
What is the base? So but you're putting a base of 20 feet on the side. If they go above 3,000 square feet, then it's 2-for-1.
If they go
If
higher.
they go up on the height, up to 10 feet. So that puts your side setback at 40. What is your base for the back?
Do we want to keep it at 60?
For everybody? It stays 60 and doesn't change?
See, it is, Scott, one thing we have to look at, some people in their garage like to put it towards the very, very back of their lot.
Right. I support the 60. I'm just wondering if you're changing that too.
No, I
Okay.
mean,
Why don't we just say everybody has to be 60 if they're a accessory one greater than 3,000 feet?
yeah.
I'm
That
fine
make
with
sense?
that, yeah.
Yeah, but on the side one, it changes as you go up on height after 3,000 square feet. Does that make sense?
Does that get it clearer so when someone's reading it, they understand what's going on?
Poor Stephanie's, oh my goodness.
What we're saying is at this time, it's when it kicks in. We're saying, once you hit 3,000 or larger is when these other criterias kick in.
Okay, so let's make sure we've got this clear for Stephanie, okay? Okay, we allow an increase up to 35 square feet, but when you go above, or 35 height, I'm sorry. When you go above 25, there's this formula 2-to-1 on your side setback, and that we're gonna set the side setback at 20 feet baseline, right?
If your building is bigger than.
If your building is bigger than 3,000 square feet, okay?
Once you hit 3,000, you gotta be having
So
20.
your maximum side would be 40 feet, And we're gonna keep the back one always at 60 feet. We're not gonna change that. If your building's above 3,000 square feet. And
So-
your maximum building size is 8,000 square feet.
So in this particular application, we're looking at 40 feet,
Right. Instead of 30.
and instead of 50.
Yes.
Right. It's a compromise.
Huh, are you still a no, Kurt?
On the 8,000.
Pardon me?
I like everything else except the 8,000.
8,000
would-
big.
When it came up and, I was always at 6. I'm just looking, I saw a drawing of 6,000 square feet and how many trailers you could put in, how many, if you wanted to have motorcycles and side-by-sides and I'm going, okay, I think for the residents at 6,000 would be able to meet what, if they're really trying to store personal belongings in there. I mean, if you look, how many cars they probably could store, over 40 cars. I'm just, if you get a car enthusiast. Because okay, if I was a car enthusiast, I don't want to stop them from being able to do it on their personal property, but I think you start getting a lot larger, even 6,000, I think people will start using for commercial, but over 6, I think it gets more as a commercial building.
So the athletic center over here is 10,000 plus square feet, right?
No, the Norton's 8, isn't it?
I mean,
No.
90-something percentages. I'd put a little cabana.
How big is the Norton
Norton
Performance?
is what, 10
Norton-
something?
Norton Performance is 9,818
Okay, so that's a 10,000 square foot building right there. So we're saying the maximum is 8,000, 2,000 square foot less than that. I think that's reasonable. I agree with the mayor on that.
I can see people putting in a workshop and, anyway, it was just a thumb in the air thing. It was,
It's a good thumb in the air.
Okay, so if I can restate what I think I've heard.
Okay.
So now everything else is staying the same. These are the changes. We're saying, once you hit a minimum of 3,000 feet, square feet, the rear setbacks jump to 60. Those never change. They stay at 60. Side setbacks, if once you hit 3,000 or more, go to 20 if they're not already at 20. And then, if you add on the height, then you add in the normal formula of 2 feet setback for 1 foot. That could potentially, if you go up to the full 35, go up to 40-foot setbacks from the side. Again, the back still stays at 60. Formula doesn't affect the back setback. Is that what I've heard?
That's what I believe.
Okay.
Is there no way we can just pass that tonight so we don't have to talk about it again?
Well, it would take some writing. Do you want to make the motion?
No.
Well, it wouldn't just be number
If you want,
2B2, Kurt, if you wanted, you can, let Rob go back and try to write something real fast while we do other agenda items and come back to it.
Bingo.
Continue it for the middle of the council, but I will,
Okay.
I think I can write that pretty
Can you
clearly.
rewrite it
Yeah.
That'd be great.
okay, so we're punting on B for right now, and now we're moving on to D, the firework restrictions.
Okay, I just want to explain why I pulled this one. I mean, I've got a personal interest in this because all of a sudden, we can't do fireworks in my neighborhood, and we've been doing them there for 40 years. So that's kind of thing. But, you know, as I reflect on what's going on in this nation, we see our TV screens full of protests, and we see violence, we see the defacing of monuments, we see the renaming of a lot of things, all promoting, quote, social justice, and kind of a loss of law and order in some ways. And, you know, I sympathize with some of the concerns. I don't sympathize with the violence. The people now are going through all these quarantines. We've had this COVID-19 scare. I mean, when you work with patients in that, people are kind of frantic and scared. So now, when we have the chance to kind of celebrate our freedom and liberty, and people do that with family gatherings and shooting fireworks and different things, we keep restricting where we can do this in the city. And so it's kind of like we can go out and do mass protests and violent and deface things, but we can't go to church and we can't set off fireworks. I have a problem with that. And You know, I've lived next to the Highland Glen Park for 31.5 years. We've lit off fountains in our cul-de-sac and sparklers. In the last few years, we've sent up a few aerials. There's yet to be any fire damage in Highland Glen Park because we're very careful, because we don't want it in there because it would burn our homes down, and I understand the concern. But I think that if we keep increasing the areas where you can't have fireworks in the city for whatever reasons, even though it's very well intentioned, and I understand where the fire chief is coming from, I think we're just going to encourage people to be rebellious, because people are going to set these fireworks off anyway. And so are we going to make the police department go around and cite everybody because they're celebrating their freedom and liberty? So I just have a hard time. I think it's a stressful time in the nation. There was a poll recently that 80% of the people said we're headed in the wrong direction. And I think that could be well true. I just think this is an opportunity that we celebrate our freedom and liberty. So I just tell one quick story. I wrote this when I sent this to the rest of the council, but I have a sister-in-law. She lives in Connecticut. She's very liberal. And but 2 years ago, she flew to Utah so she could see some fireworks because they've outlawed them in Connecticut because of all their concerns and things. And so, you know, she was amazed to come. We sat up on the parking lot at the Traverse Outlets and saw the valley light up. Now, I'm sure there were probably some unfortunate side effects and fires and injuries from that, but I think it was a celebration of the things that we most cherish, and I think we need to do that. So, you know, I'm not so sure why all of a sudden in my neighborhood it's against the law or will be against the law to shoot off fireworks, because in 31.5 years we haven't burned down the Highland Glen Park yet. Our park now is being kind of cleaned out. They've taken out 160 trees for the road. They've graded off the side area. I'm not sure why our HOA park has suddenly become a fire risk. If anything, there's nothing to burn. So, I don't know. It's a personal thing.
So can I invite Chief Thompson to come up and just go through the rationale? Because it wasn't just Pheasant Hollow, there were some other areas that were added as well.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. If I can give a little bit of background based on the rationale behind the decision to present the proposed map. About 3 or 4 years ago, the aerial fireworks were introduced as legal through aerial cakes to be launched in the state of Utah. The first year that went out, I think the legislature pulled things back because of the fire danger and fire issues that were associated with that in several of the counties. The fireworks dates have bounced around a little bit over the last decade as a result of some of this activity. And so through that process, the legislature looked at a state amendment to address a restrictive map by the authority having jurisdiction.
So just a question for you, Chief Thompson.
Yes.
So aerials were not legal until 3 or 4 years ago outside of
And
the
I may
professional
have my
ones.
dates wrong, but it may have been 5 or 6 years ago, but within the last decade, the aerial fireworks, and they're not a single shot aerial, they're an aerial cake device that's meant to be maximum height of 125 feet, but that's not counting wind or any other.
So that's
things
ones
associated.
that we can go to the fireworks store and buy.
Yeah, if they're legally purchased in Utah, they're legal to launch in Utah within the guideline window of the dates that are established each year by the legislature.
Okay.
As part of the, I guess, concessions that were made to address the state fire code and the state amendments, they, with reference to the map, they addressed 3 main categories. One would be anywhere that has dry brush or grass could be listed as a restricted area. Areas within 200 feet of waterways, trails, canyons, washes, ravines, or similar type areas. And then anything that falls within the wildland-urban interface area. With respect to the map, I believe for the most part the previously restricted areas that are identified there fall into one of those three subcategories. I came to the fire district in early 2018, and the map has not changed since 2018, with the exception of any, I guess, additional lots that have been added in the northwest area. However, there are a couple of areas that we've identified that I feel like is a cleanup process to areas that fall within those three subcategories of restriction. With respect to, I'll probably address the Meadow Lane issue because Councilmember Smith has expressed some concerns, and if I can address why we've included that area in that process. Just doing some of the research in that area, it's a one-way in and one-way out down into the bottom of Pheasant Hollow. From the top of the hill, you have over 40 homes that fall within that area, and specifically down in the bottom of Meadow Lane, we have areas where the canopy from Highland Glen Park is intermingled with the canopy of trees from several of the homes within that area. Particularly on the north cul-de-sac of Meadow Lane, we have some real challenges from a suppression perspective if we have a fire that occurs in that area. I did some, just a site survey this afternoon to make sure I was prepared for the meeting, but on the north end of the property, it starts with the Sharp home up, and you're familiar with your neighbors there, but
Sure.
no defensible space that we would consider from the park to essentially the curb. Due to the homes being 30-plus years old, you've had natural tree growth that's occurred, and the canopy just develops. It's a beautiful area, but you have challenges from a perspective if we have a fire in the park or a fire that occurs in Pheasant Hollow and tries to, or moves to the park, be it based on winds or things like that. Adjacent to him on the Johnston property, you have a home that has no defensible space. It has dry wood shakes for a roofing material. They're in a, I guess, a poorer or a low maintenance condition. The challenge there of having fireworks land on a rooftop there would be a catastrophic issue for us. There's one other home, the Kimball home that also, the Ray home that has wood shakes as well. The canopy's touching the house. We've got 6 or 7 homes on that north cul-de-sac that are very problematic for us. We would based on the incident response guide that we utilize, we would consider all of those in that area to be non-defensible, meaning that we would be very cautious we would either hit it quickly and have a plan for egress, because there's no safety zone for firefighters down in that area, and we would have a bottleneck trying to get people evacuated out of that area. As we travel to the south end, it's less problematic, but there are a couple of homes that share a similar situation. The Whipple home, the Babb home, both have canopy that's causing some challenges there and presents some limited defensible space from the park. And so that presents some real challenges for us from a fire suppression perspective. With respect to the west side of that property, or west side of the road, if you will, and the lots that abut there, they do fall within 200 feet of the AF River channel. And so that's why we looked at both sides of the street there with what I've already previously mentioned, that we have a one-way in and one-way out perspective there. I understand the concern, the want and desire for the ability to exhibit freedom and all of the things that come with that, and the opportunity to celebrate, but I have a hard time representing the position I'm in when we have a challenge that exists there.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge that a little bit, Chief, in a very respectful way.
Okay.
You could make this argument about every neighborhood in this city. And so the question is why not ban them in the whole city?
Well,
And the other thing that's a little
if I can
frustrating.
answer the
Yeah,
question.
but the thing that's a little frustrating for me is we just talked about having the city fireworks from Lone Peak. That's in your prohibited sign. So how can you have it prohibited there and then the city have them?
That wasn't my, choice to have the
But
fireworks in Lone
where else are
Peak,
we gonna
so-
have them?
They had one during the Alpine School District celebration at the graduation, and we reviewed that in a permitted process, and they used smaller, fireworks. We were there monitoring wind. We told them if they were above a certain wind mile per hour, that we would cancel the show.
But it's still in a
They-
banned zone, isn't it?
It was also launched by a pyrotech that's licensed by the state of Utah. That doesn't occur on home use and some of those challenges there that exist. It's not a one-way in, one-way out scenario like we've established exists in the Meadow Lane area. My job's to present the message essentially and to represent why I believe the restrictions should be in
So
place.
based on that map, Mountain Ridge is still okay, is that right?
Yes, Mountain Ridge, the school property is, the yellow highlighted area
Is
is the
not.
Mountain Ridge Park, which is the dry
Dry
grass
grass.
area that currently exists there. With respect to, the challenges we've had in Highland Glen Park, we had, 4 different fireworks episodes, within the launch window and outside the launch window last year. They were all, fortunately kept to a small issue, but, fireworks do get utilized in that area. They get used at the high school. We do our best to patrol that along with law enforcement to address those issues. But in my professional opinion, the areas surrounding Highland Glen Park are very problematic, including the Meadow Lane area that's
So-
identified.
Those, for instance, do they come out of Pheasant Hollow?
I'm sorry, what?
The for instance in Highland Glen Park, did they come out of Pheasant Hollow?
They did not.
I'm not aware of that.
They happened in the park. Some were juveniles launching fireworks. In most cases, that was the situation. We've had issues in the area to the north with Hidden Oaks, which we view very similar, one way in, one way out, similar canopy issues. We had a fire there 2 summers ago where they didn't launch fireworks. They simply brought their fireworks debris back from an area they launched from a legal area, placed it in the back of their UTV, and it started a vehicle fire, and it was in the canopy. Had we not been mobile when just coming from another accident, it would have been a much more catastrophic situation there as well. We have fireworks problems throughout the community. Last year, I did a quick search today. We had 10 incidents within the firework window last year and another 8 in 2018. And that was without going into a deep dive of figuring out whether every fire that we have listed was fireworks related.
So why not just ban them throughout the whole city if
Well,
we're gonna ban them in certain
The
areas?
intent behind the amendment was to limit, government from being over-restrictive and having some rationale behind the reason for restrictions. I believe the map, the way it's presented, meets the intent of the state amendment.
Scott, in state law, we can't prohibit it, throughout the entire city. There's certain areas that we can. And, woodlands, washes, stuff like that. It limits where we can apply restrictions to.
So I don't understand, and I'm sorry to be kind of so insistent on this, but I'm not sure why you banned them out of our park. I mean, they just took out 160 trees, just graded off the slope and stuff. I mean, I've been there 31 and a half years, we have not had a firework fire. Now, we had a former state representative who threw a match into a bunch of cottonwood seeds and caused a fire in the Highland Glen Park, but that wasn't fireworks. That was his foolishness. So I'm just a little frustrated with this because, you know, in all due fairness, my neighborhood's sacrificing quite a bit for the road, having our trees cut out, the slope. I have to deal with the people all the time. Now we're gonna say you can't have fireworks, you know, and what does that mean? Does that mean we just can't have aerials, or can we have, like we've done with my family for 30 years, had sparklers and fountains and stuff like that? I mean, you'd have to throw them over into the park to set it on fire.
And I'll leave it up to the council to decide whether that's an appropriate proposed option there, I mean, that certainly would be a much more welcomed opportunity to have no aerial fireworks and do something, more simple.
Or
I
you're
guess, if
saying
that really-
eliminate aerial fireworks in the city?
I'm not saying that because that doesn't meet the state statute. If I had my way, yes, I'd say that would be the appropriate way to go from a fire perspective, but obviously that's not what the legislature's determined to be the case. I think we will see an increased challenge this year. People have been quote-unquote cooped up, and I think you'll see a larger purchase of fireworks this year. People are staying home, and so they're gonna choose an opportunity to do that. We have the driest spring on record. I think we're in for some challenges this year from a fire suppression perspective during the fireworks window.
So is there a motion?
Well, I have some other questions, you know, as we, just looking at some of the area, and I called and I've talked with the chief, but some of my questions are in the northwest part of Highland. You know, we have some areas that we've added. It appears the homes that back ravines is where we've put the limitation, and I just had some questions or concerns as we get up, going up. And I'll start just, you know, on some, maybe some basic ones, like, if you look at the map, if it could get enlarged, where it says Highland Hills Park, I drove this whole area and it appears I can see everything above the Beacon Hills Park being off limit, but I'm wondering why that south end there in the Beacon Hills area, where in our map it says Highland Hills Park, can't open up. I couldn't see a lot of, you know, if you want to say wildland, I couldn't see a lot of oak, you know, trees. They were mainly in homes. And so I was just kind of wondering why we.
So you're looking at currently prohibited areas and saying you're not comfortable with them?
Well,
Not
I'm wondering,
either.
yeah. And I understand everyone never wants to go backwards, but I'm going, well, as I look at the rest of the city, it appears that we put the boundary, if they're by a wildland area, it's only the homes that back the wildland. But in certain areas of the city, such as here by the Highland Hills Park, or as we go up the Highland Boulevard, I think it's where the Irie subdivision's at, we've put some limitations, you know, in some subdivisions. I'm going, I understand they're up on the hill, but I guess my concern is I can see all those fireworks going, they're doing them. And so, you know, if we maybe give some direction where it'd be safer for them to do it, because it appears they're doing them anyway, if we could maybe give them some direction.
Yeah, if I can answer that in a couple of ways. One, the statute also references with respect to your map that you have some readily identifiable boundaries, meaning that either identify it by subdivision or street name or things like that. So we're not doing a patchwork quilt based off basically going through the area that one home has stands of oak in it and the next home has defensible space, and you start to pick which homes can and can't. It's meant to be readily identifiable and an easy process for the user to be able to identify whether they're in a restricted zone or not. With respect to the whole northwest area up there, there's stands of oak through a large portion of that. In answering your question about some of the parks, some of that city open space, and the city obviously has the right to restrict access to their parks and things like that from several perspectives, including a liability perspective of having people launch fireworks in a city-owned area.
And I'm just, so if I go look at Canterbury North,
Okay.
we've put a boundary around all the property that's on the outer ridge. But it appears when we go up to the north end of Highland, instead of putting the boundary around the outer edge, we've done it in the whole area. I'm just trying to be consistent. To me, just being fair, it seems that we're not consistent in the map.
And we do have large pockets in the north area that still have some undeveloped property and undeveloped lots up there, so that captures some of the dry grass areas that exist. We do have more washes and ravines and open space areas up throughout that area. In addition to some of those challenges, we also have, in particularly the Highland Hills subdivision, the homes are separated by less distance, meaning so if it ends up in one home, our exposure risk is much greater than, for instance, it is in some of your acre lots or things like that where you have home spread that's further apart. With respect to Canterbury North, we improved what I would deem as we improved the line to address the Dry Creek wash that travels through there, and if you've been down there, it's very.
Oh, I agree with what happened there. It's just, I appreciate you not locking off the whole Canterbury North, you know, but it seems that the subdivisions in our southern area of our city aren't locked off as much as those in the northern area.
Yeah, the northern area also presents some challenges in that we have limited access to the wildland urban interface. We have less of a road network. It takes us longer to get there. Some other challenges that it presents from a response and suppression perspective to be able to get in and take care of a fire quickly before it, especially on a wind-driven event, travels into the
Have we had, when you looked at, I think it was, 10, events last year, do you know, where were they happening in the city? Do you, I'm just, I don't know.
Yeah, we had 2 in Mitchell Hollow Park, we had 4 in Highland Glen Park, and these are just quick, references of the calls that I went through. We had one off of, in a non-restricted area, actually 2 in a non-restricted area. So being in a restricted versus non-restricted doesn't guarantee you're not gonna have a fire problem. We did have, I myself had 3 instances where we were out on patrol during the 4th and 24th, and we had people, stop launching fireworks in the northwest area. The 4th and 5th were wind event days for us. They were very hot, very dry, and we had aerial fireworks going off where they shouldn't be going off.
So what you're saying is on the 4th or 24th, as a fire department, you kind of patrol through some of the neighborhoods and...
We do, and we can't be everywhere at once, but we try to beef our numbers up and have brush trucks and fire engines and the ambulance out patrolling the area.
And then will you talk to people if they have fireworks they're launching? And
we do. If they're in a restricted area, we take a friendly approach and say, hey, are you aware you're in a restricted area? And we'd encourage you to either curtail your activities or move to a non-restricted area. Law enforcement does the same thing, and but we can't be everywhere at once, essentially. And then that all works until we get an incident or event, and then we're pulled off to take care of fire.
The only reason I was bringing up, I see the fireworks going on up there in the northwest. I can, I just see them keep going off in the 4th and 24th, and they're going off up in our restricted area, and so I was just trying to maybe help them have an area, so.
We have a demographic that doesn't struggle financially as much as others, and I think that's exhibited very well on the 4th and 24th holidays.
So let me ask a quick question. I guess I'm a little bit confused how we enforce this. Do the police go around and cite you if you do this, or you just go and be friendly, hey, don't do this, you're in a restricted area? How do you do this? Do we have a fine?
It is. It's punishable by a Class B misdemeanor and up to $1,000 fine. The police department, up until last year, took an approach that they generally issued some sort of a warning first. But in some respects, it's the officer, their discretion, whether the issue was negligent or not. And we've had individuals, not only here, but in my prior employment, that we'd have people, we'd nicely go up and say, hey, you're in a restricted area. They agree to not launch them, and 10 minutes later, off they go. That, to me, is a different scenario than someone that either didn't know or stopped and curtailed their activity. And so I think they get treated a little bit differently. Our intent would be to be friendly with the process, but at the same time not encourage a problem to continue. We have a little bit of a challenge from the fire district and the police department's perspective of we maintain coverage for 2 cities, and Alpine has taken a more strict approach to it, and their council's on board with, and granted, they have some areas that are a little more challenging than we see in some of our areas, but we have areas within Highland that rival anything that's up in the Alpine Cove area. Bull River, for instance, Hidden Oaks, some real challenging
So approximately
problems.
how much of their city have they prohibited?
They have taken a similar approach that that northeast bench and the north and west bench is all covered. They've restricted anything that's a city-owned property, and then they went through their GIS mapping, and anything within a 200-foot zone of a waterway, or a trail system, they've outlined as not approved for fireworks. So
It's mostly the lower areas?
I'm sorry?
It's mostly the lower areas? within Alpine?
That are allowed to
Yeah.
be used, yes, with exception of city-owned property and parks.
And that it's prohibited there?
It is, and they took the approach that they didn't want to be responsible for groups launching fireworks on a city property.
So you're banning all fireworks in these areas?
That is the way.
So you can't have fountains or sparklers
That's
or?
Let's
the way
discuss that. What do you
Oh.
feel about allowing fountains in this restricted areas or sparklers? What would be the concern if we did say, hey, it's a only aerial zone only versus a fountain sparkler area is allowed? I don't know this.
I think from one perspective, it muddies the water a little bit, because then we're trying to maintain what's allowed where and when and how. Are they launching it in the street where you have little to no problems or limited problems, versus are they in their backyard, or where is that happening? All of those things become a factor. The way the statute addresses it just says fireworks. It doesn't address aerial fireworks, and it actually indicates an ignition source, which could be matches or a lighter or other things like that. We've specifically addressed it from the fireworks perspective.
You mean fireworks aerials or just complete?
They're saying all
Yeah,
fireworks.
all
You can't have
fireworks.
sparklers.
All fireworks.
No sparklers on Meadow Lane anymore. I just have a hard time with it.
So is there a motion?
I just want to say, I totally sympathize with Scott, and I thought about this one a lot, because I agree with you, people should be able to celebrate, and this is one of a few things that we get to do right now. I, though, live in Viewpoint, and we've had one fire started by fireworks and 2 other fires not started by fireworks, and I've been evacuated 3 times from my home, and we live in one of those neighborhoods where there's only one way out, and it's just terrifying. So, I totally get where Scott's coming from. So I hate it that we have to make rules like this. I wish we could assume that everybody would be smart about this and that everybody would be cautious. I think it's unfortunate that we can't make that assumption, because I know that people like you always will be.
I wanna address this also. I've thought about it a lot, and, my area does allow fireworks, and it does get crazy. I think the hardest thing for me with this one is, why should some people not be allowed fireworks when we're following this, guideline that we have, and then others not? Basically, Chief's just cleaning it up. He has certain guidelines, looking at neighborhoods and seeing if they meet them or if they don't meet them. And it's hard for me to, not go along with what he's saying, because I want Scott Smith so badly to have fireworks in his neighborhood. And also, I want to let you know that I don't believe sparklers are fireworks. I think that's my hardest thing, though, is I don't want to make an exception to this, just because I want so badly for a certain neighborhood to have fireworks.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, but
Know where
I'm
I'm
not doing
going with
this
that,
just for my
Scott?
neighborhood, because when we prohibited this 2 years ago, I
Mhm.
barely supported it, and Tim Irwin was quite opposed to it, if I remember,
Yeah.
because it really is a kind of a freedom liberty thing, and it tastes of the nanny state and kind of a police state. Okay, so you people over there can have them, but you people over here can't. And I would feel better if we just outlawed aerials in these areas and let people have sparklers and fountains, because what we're gonna do is turn a lot of people into criminals who are just trying to celebrate their freedom and liberty. And I just think it's wrong, and especially right now, with all the debates that's going on with policing and all this other stuff, I think it's wrong. I just don't feel good about it at all.
I'd express some caution with, not just the outlaw of just aerials only. There are other devices that are legal within the state of Utah that travel and bounce along the ground. Ground flowers, for instance, they can travel 25, 30, 40 feet. They end up in a dry field, or they end up where they shouldn't be, and that just it presents some
And you're
additional
jumping
challenge.
jacks. I mean, like you said, I've always had some of the bigger problems where it's been the smaller things. You go,
Mhm.
and I'm going, hold it, that one seemed more dangerous than my aerial. But I don't know. It's hard because like you said, our freedoms, our liberties. So I have a hard time because I think there's some areas that possibly could be opened up, but we've closed it all the way down. And, you know, but at the same time, I want to support the chief. I believe he's probably given a lot of talk. I've talked to him twice about this, you know, talking about different things. This is my third time. I already owe him a drink because he said this could go over, if it goes over 15 minutes, I owe him a fizz, you know, but it's hard, you know, Scott, because I do agree with these liberties. You know, and I've already bought my aerials that I plan on using, you know, and I'm not in a restricted area.
So we're all going to Kurt's house for the Fourth
You're
of July.
welcome to. And I will tell you, I do put blocks by my cakes because I have had an accident where I had one cake that was set up on a timer, and when the other one it shot and tipped over the other, I had to run up there when it's going off and trying to get it off because I had a group there. You know, so I mean, I get the nervousness too. I understand the danger that can come in, but then I've decided I can be responsible, but I recognize that not everyone takes those steps. And so I think we have to be careful on everything that way, so.
Personally, I support the chief. I think he has to fight the fires when they happen, and he's doing this not out of a desire to curtail people's freedoms, but to ensure their safety. And, you know, you can, to me, this seems reasonable. And to me, if it looks like it's a continuation of Hidden Oaks, which we've already restricted for a while. So, and the Mitchell Hollow south there, that is a pretty dangerous area from a fire perspective. Now, my assumption is once some of that gets developed, then that will change. The map right now, it's an open field. But, you know, the chief, that's his job, and he is restricted by the legislature as to how much he can limit. So I personally am supportive of what he's asking. You know, like I've seen, and this is even in an area where it's not restricted, but by Country Club, there's a vacant lot near the entrance, and a couple of years ago, an aerial came from somewhere, landed on some cheatgrass there, and boom, it went up. And Scott Hart happened to be out in his yard, and he just took a hose and ran over there, and it engulfed a tree, and the flames were 15 feet high, and neighbors got involved, and then the fire came out, and I think by the time that happened, they had already contained it, but it was very, very fast, and it can happen really fast, and I don't think anybody even knew where that aerial came from. So anyway, that's my point of view.
So I move that we approve number 3D, the map for the fireworks.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So moved by Kurt, seconded by Kim. Ready for a vote? Okay, let's start with Brittany.
Yes.
Scott?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Tim? Okay. All right. On the record, it's 9:10 and we're done with consent. Yes. Are you ready? Then it's 9:10 and we're not done with consent. Rob is coming up.
So here's what I proposed. Let's bring up the draft proposal language so that's on the screen for everyone. I'd like to make your life hard.
You emailed it to her?
No, just whatever the normal staff report, yeah. Okay, so based on the discussion we had, this is my understanding what the council would like and some language to incorporate it. The motion stays the same as currently drafted in the staff report, except for the following changes. 2B2 is amended to say, any accessory building that exceeds, or that meets or exceeds 3,000 square feet shall be set back from the rear property line a minimum of 60 feet, and be set back from the side property lines a minimum of 20 feet. Everything else in that stays the same.
So it's, putting it under B doesn't limit it to the 7%? Just a question.
It would only, so putting it under B means that if you're under 5%, it just stays the same. You're under the same rules that the city has always had in place. If you're trying to exceed the 5%, that's when these extra rules kick in, which has an additional trigger if it's 3,000 square feet or larger.
I think the intent was for any.
Anything, once they hit 3,000, anything over
Doesn't-
3,000, that's where it all.
Also, we don't care about the 7%.
For that, correct.
Oh, so then we can just amend it to say accessory buildings, sorry. then
An
I have to read-
accessory building over 3,000 square
Yeah,
feet.
any accessory building except as provided below. So B then changes, any accessory building that meets or exceeds 3,000 square feet of the total, or 3,000 square feet, shall be allowed if the following requirements are met. Leave everything else the same, except you change, side property lines a minimum of 20 feet instead of 30 feet.
Okay, but there still is a 7% limit on
The total,
over 2 acres, right?
Yes.
yes.
So any accessory building that, so this is what B says. Any accessory building that meets or exceeds 3,000 square feet, shall be allowed if the following requirements are met. 1, 2, 3 stay the same except for sides or, 20 feet. And I guess you'd have to add a number 4 that says accessory buildings on the lot may cover up to 7% of total gross lot area. So that's still 7%, and it's just, if you're up to 3,000, all of this kicks in.
Anything 3,000 or over.
Anything 3,000 or over, and you're still limited to 7% of your total gross lot area. And then height changes as follows. I think the simplest way to do it is we just amend 3B3, and we tack on to the end of that, provided that in no event shall the rear setback be increased beyond 60 feet.
Say that one more time, no,
So 3B3 stays the same, except we add on to the end, provided that in no event shall the rear setback be increased beyond 60 feet. So theoretically, you could have a small but tall building that's under the 3,000 square foot limit, but they really want it tall for some reason. You could still do the 1 to 2, but in no event, if you're doing it big and tall, it's just 60 feet is your max, however it works out.
For the rear setback.
For the rear setback. And the sides then are 20 feet on the other one, and
are you saying that if they have a 1 acre lot, they can go to 35 feet? Is that what the understanding is? Or does this only apply to 2 acre lots?
still only applies to 2 acre lots.
Okay.
Haven't changed anything there. So you're just limiting the maximum that formula can increase the rear setback. You just cap it at 60. However, whatever the minimum base is, it can only get up to 60.
At 60, it does not increase anymore. They could stay at 60.
They can stay right at 60, have a really big, really tall building. If it meets everything else, you're still just at 60 for the back. That would put the side setbacks up to 20, because your minimum would be 20 for the large one. And then 1 to 2, you add 10 feet in height, 20 feet in side setbacks, up to 40.
And maximum size of the building, 8,000.
Maximum size building, 8,000, unchanged.
Is somebody, any discussion on that? Does that make sense?
no.
Does that cover what we talked?
I'll make a motion then.
Okay.
I move that we approve consent item 3B with the changes presented to us by the city attorney concerning a height of 35 feet, the setback formula on the side 2 to 1, if you're above 3,000 square feet, right? And a maximum setback on the side of 40. That's what it would be, right? And,
Well, you don't, when you say maximum, they could go wider than 40 if they wanted.
okay, so the setback 20 plus the formula. With a maximum setback in the back of 60 feet.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we want to do this voice vote too? Okay, let's start with Kim.
Yes.
Kurt?
No.
Scott?
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes.
Tim? All right. That passes 4-1. All right, now it's 9:20 and we're done with consent. Okay. Tara, do you have this for?
So this is a proposal for an annexation of 473 square feet of property located outside of Highlands city limits at approximately 10147 north, 6960 west, and it is the property located in green on the map before you. It is being petitioned by Jason Matheny. Then-
Is that it?
Nope, there's one more. Just for your background, on March 31st, 2020, council approved .57 acres of property outside city limits to be watered. As part of that approval, the property would have to be annexed into Highland City and Lehigh City for future watering. On May 5th, 2020, council approved the resolution stating Highland City's intent to annex 473 square feet of property. And so this is part of the requirement with state code is to do a public hearing as part of this. We did do the appropriate notifications for, according to state code. We haven't received any written correspondence, and if you want to skip. And then this is the proposed annexation plat that shows the 473 square feet. And as I said, we did the appropriate notifications for state code 10-418. And your proposed motion, I think, is on, yep, your proposed motion is in front of you. I do not see the applicant on the Zoom meeting. They might be on YouTube Live, but any questions?
If there are no questions right now, I'll go ahead and open up for public hearing. Is there anybody on that would like to speak to this?
Right now, there's just Mr. Peck still trying to unmute. He hasn't said anything. And nobody's said anything on YouTube Live.
Okay, so public hearing closed on this matter. Council, further discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Awesome.
I move that the city council accept the findings and approve the annexation.
Do you also need to move to accept the findings and adopt the ordinance?
That's on the next one, isn't it?
Does that apply to the next, is it just the first bullet or the first and second bullet, Tara?
Oh, yes. There's two motions here.
Yes.
So we accept the annexation, and the second motion is that we moved as a city council, accept the findings and adopt the ordinance annexing 473. Should we do this in the same?
Yeah, I think that one
Is that
same.
the
We have
plan?
a second one, but it's different.
Okay.
So motion was the to approve the annexation and adopt the ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Scott, second by Kim. Ready for a vote?
Oh.
We are voting electronically for those of you that are listening or watching online. I'm impressed that you guys still are active on your, Brittany, are you able to? Sure. We'll take your votes. Okay, reveal.
Yes.
Aaron, you can go to the next. Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Next is public hearing resolution adopting final amendments to Highland City, it's item 5, action, a request by Jason Matheny for approval of an amendment to the Highland Ranch subdivision located at approximately 10147 North 6960 West. Tara?
So this is a follow-up to the now approved annexation of 473 square feet. Mr. Matheny will need to go through the plat amendment process to combine that now annexed property into his lot number 24. He is requesting to do this is the purpose to attach a detached garage to on his main dwelling for whatever reasons he's wanting to, but so he can meet the necessary setbacks. So this will be the amended plat. It'll be Highlands Ranch Plat B, taking in that 473 square feet. And we did do the appropriate citizen notifications as well. We haven't received any written correspondence, and here's your proposed motion for you to consider.
So no public hearing on this?
No public hearing, it's just an
So
action.
discussion or a motion?
Mayor, I move that the city council approve Highland Ranch Plat B amended, subject to those 2 stipulations recommended by staff.
I'll second it.
Moved by Kurt, seconded by Scott. Ready for a vote? And the race is on. Brittany still has that puzzled look on her face. Voice?
Yes.
Okay. Aaron, we're ready for the rest. That passes unanimously. And we are on to item 6. Public hearing resolution adopting final amendments to the Highland City 2019-2020 fiscal budget year budget.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. I'm gonna try to play finance director here. I'll do my best. So here we go. The first item, related to the budget, deals with the current year, fiscal year budget amendments. I'm just gonna highlight, back in January, the council did approve mid-year budget adjustments. Those included, increasing, use of previous year's revenue, decrease in, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Using revenue for, capital projects and some changes to the library budget. Since that time, the council has approved a number of expenditures. Since then, total Spring Creek Park cost estimate right now is $497,000, almost $498,000. Looks like we're gonna have another $8,600 bill because SOD, our original provider, can't get it till August. So to have any chance to have SOD first part of July, we're gonna have to change vendors, which the square foot cost goes up with that. Now, we have the boilers that we talked about. We're also showing a decrease in sales, franchise, and phone tax for a total of $145,000. You'll see a decrease in the use of reserves by $119,000, and a decrease in our general fund expenditures, which from what was approved by the previous budget, by $156,000. But we are showing an increase in our license and permit revenue by $129,000, almost $130,000. We're seeing a lot of things like basement finishes and additions, some not so much, but things that people can do at home that they're doing that they hadn't done in the past. I would just like to point out, I think staff has done a great job managing the current fiscal year budget. Some of the things we did, you know, COVID's really thrown a wrench in our works for us in the budget process and everything that we do. One of the things that we did in March is that we stopped any discretionary spending and only focused on needs. And that's helped us limit the use of reserves. The fact that, you know, we had almost $200,000 in additional expenses, over $200,000 in expenses in the AC, a truck, and boiler, and we're only using $119,000, I think, is a credit to what we do and where we, and how we budget. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you have. You'll notice on your sheet, you'll see various, numbers. Only in governmental accounting is read a good number on this spreadsheet. But you can see all the, other minor changes. We just wanted to highlight the larger ones for you. Be happy to answer any questions.
So Nathan, I have one question. You're saying out of the reserves is 118,928.
Yep.
In the information, it says additional 172 will be used from previous year's revenue. So are we short the $172,072, or are we only coming short the 118,928?
So if you look at page, sorry, just gotta find it.
I'm just going off the material. It says the physical.
No, you're right. I'm
Okay.
just refer you to the right page. If you look at page, 1030, page 1 on the attachment, line 103330, we're forecasting a use of previous year's earnings of $172,000. Originally, we budgeted $291. So the difference between those two numbers is 118.
So we're using less of the surplus.
Using less of the surplus, correct. $19,000 less than we had previously planned. Did that answer your question?
So so it's 172,000 that we're pulling
Yes.
out of reserves.
Yes.
If you would have said we are ending the year at a negative 172,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is justifiable for the AC, the trucks, all that stuff that we didn't budget
We're
for.
all approved throughout the time. And I do agree with the staff. This has been kind of a hard time, and I'm sure it still is, but the last 90 days have been kind of a unusual, or maybe the 100's been unusual going forward. We still don't know exactly where all of our revenues could be, how it sits out, but we appear to weather better than some others.
Yes, very much so.
Nathan, I appreciate the color coding.
You're welcome. Hopefully we can figure out a better way to do it next time, but try to be able to break it up for you. And that's tedious, by the way.
If there is no other comments from the council, I would move that the city council adopt.
Need to
Right.
hold,
Well, wait, we need to do a.
Public hearing?
It's a public hearing. So, Tara, is there anyone on for public comment? If we open a public hearing,
Sorry, give me just 1 second, Mayor. No, the only other public still present with us is Cole Peck. Oh, I guess so I'll unmute. He wants to. He does not look like he wants to be unmuted, and there, are no comments on YouTube Live.
okay, so public hearing was open, we're closing it, now ready for a motion. Kurt, go ahead.
I move that the city council adopt resolution 2020 number be included, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
I second it.
Motion by Kurt, second by Tim, ready for a vote. And Brittany, you deserve a sip for that one of your fizz. Okay, we're done. Passes unanimously. All
And
right.
Scott, there was no comment about the $60,000 like last week.
Okay.
Had to do it because Scott had called me, he got pounded.
You know, that's in the new budget, Kurt.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm glad we have an hour to be jolly. We turn into a pumpkin at 10:30, that's my bet tonight. I'm revealing, so somebody's gonna extend so I lose, okay. a public hearing resolution adopting the fiscal year 21 fee schedule.
Are we on fee schedule or are we on PI?
Oh, wait, sorry. We're on the interfund. We're item number 7, public hearing resolution approval of an interfund transfer from the pressurized irrigation fund to the general fund.
Okay, so what this resolution does is it allows, basically the PI fund to pay for the costs associated with watering the parks and public open spaces in the city. It would cost about $2.03 per customer a month, to do so. If we don't do this, then we have another $108,000 of expense in the general fund. And, most cities do this and hold this in talking to others, that they do this. But that's what this resolution does. We did it last year, and it allows, basically PI fund to pay for that instead of the general fund.
And it does it in a way that's transparent, so we know that we're paying for parks and what we're paying for it and how much.
Yep.
So I appreciate the transparency that this shows. All right, is that it?
Yeah, you do need to hold a public
Right.
hearing.
So any questions for Nathan on this? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. And while we're checking,
We have nobody watching on Zoom at the moment, and no comments on YouTube Live.
okay, so public hearing closed. Ready for a motion?
Can I ask just one question?
Sure.
So have we done this recurrently, or is this the first time?
This is the second or third year that we've done that.
Okay. Somehow I just don't
This
remember.
is, we've actually, we've traditionally done it. The state auditor just came out with additional requirements to, do the public hearing and things like that if we were gonna do that.
Okay, so that's where I'm confused.
Mayor, I apologize, there was one public comment that got in. Brian Braithwaite made the comment on YouTube to please approve this.
Okay, so we have.
Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. So Brian is watching.
I'd like to
That's
make,
good to know.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Kim.
I propose that the city council adopt the resolution authorizing the transfer of $108,000 from the pressurized irrigation fund to the general fund for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 budget.
I'll second it.
Moved by Kim, seconded by Scott. We're ready for a vote? We're done. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Public hearing resolution adopting the fiscal year 21 fee schedule.
Mayor, this one's me. So I'm just gonna highlight, the three changes, that you see in the, what was included, and those were in red in your packet. We are recommending that cemetery burial plot fees be raised by 3%, according to our perpetual care fund study.
And that's effective, these are all effective July 1st.
So this is for next fiscal year, so these would all go into effect July 1st. The second would be we'd remove the, there was a charge for non-resident fees for associate members of the new CLIC library system. The only library, it used to be us in Saratoga Springs. We became a full member, and Saratoga Springs recently left the co-op. So there's nobody to charge this fee to anymore. So we'd remove this. And then there's a number of miscellaneous garbage fees that we are adding. Traditionally, Republic was actually charging these fees directly to our customers, and instead, Waste Management's approach is to have us charge those fees. So it's things like if you are contaminating your can and you get multiple warnings, or if you lose your can, those type of things. So we hope to never charge those, but in the event we need to, we want them in our fee schedule.
Okay, and is there a replacement cost for cans if they wear out within a certain time period, then?
So if it wears out due to normal wear and tear, there's no replacement cost. If you just think your can's stinky and don't want to clean it out yourself, there's a cost.
Okay.
So hold it, in our contract, it does state if the cans get damaged, because sometimes their arms come and break, they will replace them for free. They're not, this is not coming down, the can exchange fee of $45 is not coming into play, is it?
Correct. So that $45 is just if, so if normal wear and tear or if their machinery breaks the can, they replace it at no charge. But if for whatever reason, the can's still functional, but you want a new can, it's a $45 fee.
Then it says a can overage fee. Is that where the can's too heavy or just they keep stuffing a ton of stuff in it?
Yes, so if they put too much in their bin, and actually our contract, with Waste Management says they have to have received 2 written warnings about this, and on the 3rd time, then we can charge them a $25 overage fee.
So do we do those warnings, or does Waste
Waste
Management?
Management would,
And then they would let you know that they've done it,
correct.
and then we remit the fee back to them?
Yes, so they'll charge us, and we'll just remit the fee to them.
So I'm just trying to make sure, because these are new fees. Service reactivation fee. So if I have 2 cans and I want to go down to 1, and then I call them back in 2 years and say I want to go to a second can, they're going to be an activation fee?
No, the $25 reactivation fee, Kurt?
Yeah.
So that actually applies if we've taken away their can because they've stopped paying for service, and now they want to, pay for service again. They've got caught up. So it's a reactivation fee to bring the can back out to them.
So if someone has 2 cans in the summer because of yard waste, and then goes to 1 in the winter, and then puts the can back in the summer,
This is somewhat different than what we've done previously. What you're talking about, Mayor, is called it's the $10 retrieval fee. So if you get a can and keep it for less than 12 months, then it's a $10 retrieval fee. And the reason they do that is, I know that there are a number of homes, because we don't do grain waste, who get a second can or a third can for just a few months. But Waste Management, actually, the cost to come out and bring that can and then take it away in 3 months, they don't make any money at that point. So they're just trying to incentivize people to keep the cans longer. If you do the math, it's actually worth it for you to just pay the $10 to have them haul it away again. We want to recoup some of their cost, essentially, that it takes for them to drive out and get the can.
so do they charge you to bring you the new one, or that's?
No, so not to bring a new one, just to take it away if you've had it for less than 12 months. Our standard used to be 6 months, and so
Yes.
this is an extension.
So they can retrieve fee, it's going to cost $10 for them to come pick it up if it's in 10 months. If they want to have it re-delivered out, it's going to be $25, so it'd be a $30 charge for what the mayor was talking about, correct?
No, that $25 reactivation only happens if,
No, not reactivation, container re-delivery fee.
container redelivery, I'm sorry. The redelivery fee, so that's if you've broken the rules and we've taken away your can. You can't get that can back for 6 months. If after 6 months you are ready to have your can back again, there's a $25 redelivery fee.
And how often has that happened?
I doubt it has, I don't know how closely Republic has monitored it. I've never heard of it, happening.
Taking away their garbage services, is it because they're getting it too heavy, overstuffing, or is it just non-payment?
So this is, again, this is a 3 strikes and you're out, rule according to our contract. This is if you're putting garbage in your recycling bin, or if you're putting inappropriate things in your garbage bin, such as flammable materials, or if you're getting it too heavy.
So, Aaron, as we go through this transition, so Waste Management has brought us 1 can. We have the recycling can. My wife says, well, they're gonna bring us a new recycling can, whatever. I said, well, it'll be an interesting transition for 2 weeks. But, I guess one of the questions I have is, how are we gonna notify people that we have all these different fees for garbage now? Are we just gonna say, hey, you can look up on the website, or, because I'm sure this addresses several different scenarios, which are a little bit confusing.
I agree. I honestly, Scott, I see us charging these very rarely. So the notification, as a public hearing, we had to notify people that we were intending to do this, so we did that in one way. When people called to order an additional garbage can, right now, the standard practice is to tell them, hey, you've got to keep this for 6 months, otherwise is our standard. So now they'll say, you've got to keep this for 12 months, or it's a $10 removal fee. I don't think that honestly any of the others are going to apply very often, but they will be on our website in the fee schedule, and they'll also be linked on, we've got a utility rates page that we would link them on as well.
So obviously, the person who interacts with people will know all the details here.
Yes, absolutely. Angelique and Candace will know our details here.
So why are we taking this on versus Waste Management?
That's a good question. I think Republic was probably doing it just traditionally 15 years ago. That's how they did it, and so we just kept doing it that way. Waste Management, they're not set up to be billers of our customers. We are the ultimate billers, and so they've asked us to take that on.
So let me ask you, will they bill us automatically for something that, you know, if our residents come and says, hey, I don't agree with this, but we get a bill as a city because we're the customer, and then we could get stuck with some fees.
We could, and you know, if we disagree with Waste Management's judgment, we have the option, I think, to waive certain fees or to forgive certain fees. We would still be charged as the city, probably, depending on what we came to an agreement with Waste Management over that particular issue. Again, I see these happening very rarely, so I'm not too concerned about that. But we tried to lay out the contract, and Rob was very diligent on this, and I appreciate that people, in order, like, if they're gonna take away cans, or you're gonna get these overage charges or things, you have to warn them 2 times, at least in writing, before it happens. So I hope that people will follow the rules at that point, and we don't have to get there.
I agree with these fees. I think there's just a few that I would like to have looked at within the next few months by staff, just to make sure we're comparable with other surrounding cities, such as the field fees, our community events, our community center. I just like to make sure that we're comparable and we're charging an appropriate amount. We're not subsidizing.
That is on the to-do list post-budget.
Yes,
yeah.
very post-budget. I'm saying August, September.
Great.
And all your free time.
Thank you. Another thing that I think most of you are aware of, the city is having an impact fee study done.
Yes.
And when that's completed, they'll come back with the recommendations. Right now, we don't know what those are. In the past, it's been typical that the net difference, some will go up, some will go down, but the net difference is negative for this, for the city. So,
We'll see.
but we'll see. We don't know.
But I would second what Kim is mentioning, that I think it's good for us to look at, you know, some of these fees. You know, I noticed that if they're nonprofit, we don't specify if it's nonprofit within the city, you know, like with, you know, some things. And I think we have another criteria on some, but it'd probably be good to look at this, because and then what our usage is, like at the community center or some of our fields.
Okay, so is there a motion? Let's see, this is a public hearing. This is a public hearing.
Yes, sir.
So let's see if any of our vast audience, and I'm not referring to Brian's waistline.
So we now have an audience of 1 with Donna. And nothing has come in so far on YouTube Live.
Okay, all right, so we'll close the public hearing, and ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the city council approve the Highland City, Utah fiscal year 2021 fee schedule.
Is there a second?
Can we amend that, since it's also a resolution? Do we also need to also vote to include the resolution 2020-XX?
Okay, I'll remake the motion since you don't like it. I move that we approve the resolution number 2020XX of the Highland City Council, Highland City, Utah, for the fiscal year 2021 fee schedule.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Scott, second by Kim. We're ready for a vote? That passes unanimously. On to resolution adopting the certified tax rate for fiscal year 2020, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you know, each year, the county adjusts the certified tax rate based on, property values and so forth. The only way it increases, the revenue for taxes increase is if we have new growth or, the council chooses to raise property tax. So the numbers before you are the tax rate, that the county has identified for this year to generate, just over 1.7, in general city tax, and 264,000 for the library.
And those are both reductions in rate from the previous year, correct?
Yes.
So, council, you did something good without doing anything.
So, I've always wanted to ask this question.
Ask.
Okay, so this question is, so, you know, the certified tax rate goes down if our property values go up, and it kind of back and forth, so we kind of maintain the same amount, except for growth.
Right.
What if we just choose not to adopt the certified rate and just keep the old one? Is that an option?
Yes, but that's essentially what you're doing, is raising the rate, from what is proposed, because we would be getting more revenue, so we'd go through the truth and taxation process at that point.
Well, I understand that, but it just seems interesting that we have to adopt the rate the county gives us, that we just couldn't keep our old rate if we wanted to.
Well, because the old rate is essentially, you would be getting more from property tax at that point.
That's right.
So it's an increase
Yeah, I
in
just-
property tax.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wondered why you can't ever do that.
Some
Yeah.
cities do that.
Some cities
or
actually
some-
do
Or
that.
some cities set.
And they have to go through truth and taxation.
They have to go through truth and taxation every year, and some cities set, okay, whatever inflation was, we're just going to keep it at that. So if it was a 3% inflation year, they'll just do a 3% increase to just keep up with inflation.
So it may be-
Options to consider.
I mean, I'm not a big tax raiser, but it might be interesting to look at that.
The smaller increases are much better than not doing it for 20 years like the county, and then doing
Then a
That's
great big
a good
one that
one.
raises opposition. So, I mean, you could say, well, hey, we have the same certified tax rate as last year.
that's been discussed, and I think actually, someone was saying, well, we should make that legal, that you can do that. That it would be the state legislature that would need to make the change, but to
Right.
allow that to happen without.
Well, especially in these tax revenue starved cities, I just think, you know, we ought to look at some flexibility. And I don't like raising taxes, but, you know we need some more revenue.
Yes. Now, I did read through the comments. This is, I may be losing my bet, but I did read through the comments on the survey, and there were a number of questions around taxes and fees and how it's horrible and we're awful. And so I did put on your desk, I'll make these public, but, relative to the county as a whole, our city tax is the second lowest, actually in North County, sorry. Linden is first, their rate is 1% lower than ours. And Alpine moved to third, they used to be number one, and their rate's 17% higher than ours. And Eagle Mountain, I see Aaron wrinkling her nose, is 105% higher than ours. So we are low there, and then relative to utility rates, even with our public safety fee and the road fee, we are still below average compared to our neighbors. The highest in our neighborhood is an average of $182 a month. The lowest is Eagle Mountain, you can smile, it's at 105, and we're at 140, which is slightly below average. So if you combine those two, we're below average for the county, if you combine property tax and utility bills. So we're not doing that bad, comparatively speaking.
And I pointed out to the mayor when he sent this out, I said, that's interesting, because a lot of these cities that are charging more property and fees than we do also have much larger direct sales tax.
Yeah,
So,
AF has got huge.
Yeah, huge, and Lehigh has huge. So it's interesting. That may be why they have more money to work with in their budget.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate you putting this together, because it always helps me each year as you do this. And it'll be interesting as we look here in the county, on the tax, where you're saying it's second lowest and Linden is the lowest. It will be interesting, because I think sales tax wise, in Utah County, Linden might be hurt the most, because they have the highest sales tax.
Well, and they have, a lot of their revenue comes from car dealers, which are really, not doing well in the current environment,
I mean,
so-
as we look at taxes, I think we've actually been pretty even. We didn't get hit really heavy with the sales tax. We're hearing that throughout the state, that, a lot of cities are worried about that coming back to Scott's and going, there is one thing that I think we need to recognize those who came before us, that there's one thing that we are extremely low on, which appears to be culinary water. So it appears that the water stewards were good many years back, because that still seems to be where we're one of the
Yeah,
lowest.
we are the lowest at, just under $17, and the highest is American Fork at 54.
I thought this was super interesting. I agree with Scott. I've always found it interesting that these rates aren't indexed to inflation, because it does seem like then you have to sometimes make a huge jump. I guess one thing that's been interesting to me as we've gone through the budget process, it's been a little bit different than I guess how I anticipated it being. And when I was talking to Nathan earlier, I think maybe it's because it's felt a little bit this year reactionary based on what's been happening with coronavirus. And I feel like we maybe didn't have a chance to discuss options like maybe would have happened in previous years, because I think we were so uncertain with what we were facing and maybe thinking about facing bigger shortfalls than maybe we have. I think, and I mentioned this at our work session, I think it would be a good idea to spend some time looking at the general fund study that was done in the fall. And maybe, after we get through this summer, but maybe in like September, October, once we have a little bit better idea what's happening, and maybe talk as a council about what our long-term goals are, what we want to do with Mountain Ridge Park maybe, or the park maintenance building, or I know we've said we need snow plows, or what we're going to do with open space and this moratorium that's gonna come to an end sooner rather than we think. So I guess I would like to start in the fall, maybe being a little bit more proactive, so that next year when we start our budget season, I don't know, we're thinking maybe a little bit more proactively about what we would like to see, and maybe have a chance to have conversations with people in the community, maybe expand a little bit on the survey of what people wanted to see, and really dig into some of the issues and reassess our priorities a little bit.
Great suggestion.
Hey, Erin, I just have a question for you. So those cities that do take into account that 3% inflation, do they have to do truth in taxation every year?
Yep, it still apply, truth in taxation still applies in that scenario, but it's something, there was a conference session I attended recently about it, we attended, I should say. Because it's something the community has done for a number of years, it seems expected, and they don't get pushback regarding it. And when you're talking about a 3% or a 2% increase, it seems normal to them. And so every year they kind of had this the staff has a conversation with council. This has been the policy, this has been the practice. Do you still want to continue it? And so far they've have for 5-ish years or so, depending on from city to city. So some are longer. I remember one was, I think they were going on their 12th year or so of doing it.
So what cities are we talking about? We're talking about cities.
So I'm remembering Woods Cross, or not Woods Cross, West
Valley?
West
West
Haven?
Haven?
No, it's one, it's
West
in
Point?
north, it's like in Ogden area, Davis County, west, where's Kyle Laws at? Do you remember what Kyle Laws, isn't it West Point? I think it's West Point, is the one who gave the presentation on it, but there's a few other cities, I just can't think of them. Yeah, they're a smaller city.
With limited.
Other than this one example we're giving, is there other examples in Utah County or things that way?
I don't recall any in Utah County. I'd be happy to find my notes on that and send it out to you.
I mean, I think it'd just be interesting, you know, we talk about it, but I'm not sure it's been pushed too heavy. I haven't heard too much about it, so I was just trying to see what's going. We'd have to go through truth and taxation no matter what, but it is,
And truth, it might be, truth and taxation is just a public hearing, but we have to wait because the county has to figure out what our tax rate should be and then has to share it with residents so that they can be fully informed.
Right.
But we shouldn't be more fearful of it than in a public hearing, but.
Yeah, if we ever do have to raise property taxes, though, we're going to have to do it in small increments.
Yes.
And, you know, it'd be interesting, especially in these years where the tax rate or certified tax rate drops, if we just couldn't adopt the old one and just move things up a little bit at a time and put an inflation index.
so Scott, is that your motion? You're gonna try to keep it the same this year?
Well, I don't know how we'd go through that, would we?
I think we missed our window, I think.
We missed, but the problem is one
Technically
of the
not,
problems is we don't get these certified tax rates until the last minute.
Right.
You're right. So if council has any inclination to potentially change the rate or hold, I guess I should say, hold it at last year's
Yeah.
rate or inflationary, it would be nice to have, you know, to be prepping, as Brittany talked about, be prepping for it sooner. You haven't missed the window, you haven't adopted it yet, so in theory, we could go through that process. It's just, it would be,
But you'd
Little
have to
creative.
adjust the whole budget.
yes.
You adjust the whole budget, and plus, you know, we have to also be aware of what environment we're in too. I mean, we are still coming through COVID, we still have, you know, I think, you know, we said 14%, I think, in the nation, but I think Utah's still about 9% unemployment. I mean, we still, you know, everything's not also just open up, you know, flourishing again. I think we have to still be a little careful with what's going on.
I would agree. We'd get hung or
Yeah, I mean, it's
turn into
just,
pinatas.
I just was interested.
No, it's a worthy thought, and we should put it on the table for next year and talk about it in the fall. So is there a motion on adopting the certified tax rate?
I'll make the motion. I move the city council adopt the certified tax rate for Highland City for fiscal year 2021 as 0.001216. And I assume that's the total, because that includes the library as well,
Wait.
right?
It's
That's what's down here.
0.01.
12554?
Oh,
Is that what you
okay,
mean,
so you
Scott?
put in the wrong thing here, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what one is
Oh,
right?
Is there another slide here on the
No,
background? Is
in
that
our
previous?
presentation
my
packet,
fault.
it says propose the following motion if you want to approve it. I moved this in exactly what Scott just did.
Yeah, it's just
Apologize.
0.001216, but
So
does
what
that
is the
add
right
up?
number?
In your resolution, it also shows the .00126
Okay.
with .00157 going to general operating, .0000159 going to library.
Yes, so it's right. It's the correct fact.
I'm sorry, I was reading the slide, Scott, well, which number is correct, Nathan?
Okay, yeah. Well, the correct number is it's point
0.001057 for
which is
general fund,
the general fund,
and
and
0.00159
for
for
the library.
Oh,
library.
that's not what's on our resolution.
So I'm guessing what's on the
Oh.
background that we're
It's
looking
the
at
combination of the two.
no, is the
Old?
old rate.
Combination.
No, because the combined numbers is different than what you just said.
Hang on. How did we get this, I'll know better and read the resolutions here.
Well, you're doing it right. by
Resolution
looking at
correct, or is the
staff
slide
report.
correct?
Nathan's verifying right now.
So do we have to do truth and taxation if we read it wrong?
Yes.
Maybe we could say something to the effect of, as proposed by the, what is the state?
As provided by the state.
The county,
So the
assessor?
resolution is correct.
So the slide is that last
Slide
year's?
is wrong, slide's last year's. My fault, sorry.
So the resolution is correct at .00.
Is there a second slide with this year's?
No, it's a voting slide, I checked.
So Scott, confirm exactly what we're doing. It's the .00126, correct?
Yes, just motion to adopt the certified tax rate as identified in the resolution.
And so the 0.001057 and the 0.000159 add up to the does it? Because when I just
Point
added it,
zero
it
zero
didn't.
1216.
Okay, so I made it right.
Yes,
Did.
thank you.
I
And you
apologize.
uncovered
I'll second.
issue, so, and that motion by Scott, second by Kim, we're ready for a vote. Okay, moving on to the next item, adoption of final Highland City budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Okay.
And let the
All right.
record show, Brian Braithwaite just walked into the room.
He's here to cheer us on, I think. Okay, so I'll make this short. Based on our work session last week, we've made one change to the budget. We've increased $20,000 in the open space wages, which increased the amount used from previous year's revenue to $40,000 and change. As requested, we did look at funding a staff engineer. This would be to replace our operations and maintenance director position. While that employee was here, we were paying a total of $120,000 in total compensation value. We are anticipating a total compensation value of $81,000 for this position. That would be split basically half and half between the general fund and enterprise funds. So that position is funded in the enterprise funds. It has not been funded in the general fund for quite some time. So it would be an additional $40,000 in the general fund.
So this
if
is
the
in
council-
addition to what we went through the work session last
Correct.
week. The staff has come up and added another budget item.
So this is not included in the budget in front of you. This is, if you chose to include this position, you would make a motion to include this, and then we'd go revise the numbers.
Is there a reason you have to do it now versus doing it later?
No, Todd needs help sooner than later, and the sooner we can get advertised and start recruiting, the better off we are.
I mean, because what I've always noticed, if we say we're approving the $81,000 wage, it really almost becomes $140,000.
No, that 81 is total compensation
And
value.
that's, so it's $60,000
yes.
salary, $21,000 benefits.
Yes, that's correct.
I've always been surprised when it's $60,000 salary, it always appears to be almost 50 or 60% of their salary for benefits. And that doesn't equate to that in your benefit package. I'm just, from what I've always observed, the 60,000 seems to also jump up, that it'd be between 30 to 40,000 in benefits.
So the previous position was 80,000 salary and $40,000 benefits.
Yeah, 50%.
About.
So when I was
There you
saying
go.
60,000 is only gonna be,
Yeah, it's about
third.
40%, because it's a lower salary. But that's estimate right now.
but the benefits are usually the same.
So I think what you would be approving is a total compensation package, however it works out.
So happy to answer any questions that you have on the budget.
Since this is new and we haven't discussed it, what would the staff engineer, what would be some of their job, what would they help us with?
So I'll have Todd jump in here in a second, but basically they would do all the plan review for development. They would do drawings for road plans. They would do drawings for other infrastructure projects. Todd would review those. One of the benefits is Todd would allow Todd to spend more time at Public Works also. Right now, he basically works through the night to get this stuff done, so,
Which I can attest to.
Well, I know Todd's a super person, so, but as we, look at that as if, I always get, my concern is once you hire full-time,
correct.
it's hard, have we looked at if we went and put some of this out to contractors? Would there be other options?
Our consulting budget is already $40,000+. So we've, just in engineering, and when you add the other enterprise funds, you're probably looking at 60, 70, right, Todd? More than that?
Saying what those were paying, this person would take over, we would not be using outside consultants.
We'd have to use some outside, but I'll let Todd jump in here and tell you what the plan is, so I don't.
Well, it can't just be replacing what we're currently doing because he's overloaded.
Right, this is more, we still would need consultants to help design some of our bigger infrastructure projects. Right now, we're just overtaxed with trying to keep up with projects. There's things that are not being done that need to be done. And really bringing another body in is really the goal. I'm just not spending the time I need to be with Public Works and the supervision there, but also with all the projects that we have going on, I'm not keeping up, so. And long-term, what, in years past, when we're even smaller city, my position was taken care of with 3 people. So we're definitely understaffed right now. I don't worry about keeping this person busy, because there's things that we're not doing that we should be doing, that we haven't been doing for years.
Now, Josh Pardon's the one I think that left. Justin Pardon was the one that left, that you're kind of taking the wage from the enterprise funds to be able to do, correct?
Correct.
But I don't think Justin was doing any engineering, was he?
No, he was doing the oversight at Public Works that is not being done.
So that's where the shift is. You're gonna take over what Justin was doing with the Public Works.
Well, but even prior to me coming here, Matt Shipp was the city engineer, Public Works director, and he also had Nathan Lundstedt, who was a staff engineer. So for years, we had 2 positions, technically 3 positions that I am trying to fill.
I think that really kind of helps me understand a little bit better.
So is there another slide, Nathan?
So one thing that we included with this budget that we haven't in the past is a list of our capital projects that we're planning on next year, and that's part of the packet. And in front of you, you can see the ones. There was a couple questions about PI projects and things like that, and how much we're spending. This is where all the money's going to. This will be revisited also when after our impact fees, we'll do a utility rate study and go over this in further detail. This was presented a couple times ago, I think.
Any other questions from council? Now, with respect to the raise, the employee, we're saying
So at the last meeting, they discussed whether to implement that in October. It is included in the budget as far as, so you know what those costs are, but we are including a recommended stipulation that would say would not be allocated until council provides the authorization.
So it's in the budget, but we're saying here, that wouldn't be used unless there was explicit approval from council.
Correct.
And then Nathan, my understanding on the budget, we're pretty well neutral. We're like $79 over. I mean, is that?
Yeah, so we've had to increase to pay the expense in open space, seasonal employees. We've had to increase the potential general fund surplus use to $45,000 from $25,000.
So you're saying we're negative 45 going into the
Correct.
year? What page is that on the budget, so I can?
That is on page 1, item 103330.
So, but that is inclusive of the 2% raise. Absent
Yes,
that-
sir.
Absent that, we would be close to break even.
Close to, yes.
So just a general question, in years past, and I think there's an effort to try to do this year as well, but we oftentimes, project our revenue very conservatively.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still feel like our revenue is quite conservative? And is there a chance that we may exceed that?
I'm hoping it's conservative. So I
A lot
think
of
there,
uncertainty this year.
yes.
Yeah.
We have about in sales tax, about $130,000, $131,000 reduction in what we anticipated. We also have, reductions of about $68,000 in other tax revenue. We'll know more in about 6 days when we get the sales tax numbers for June. But that's about a 4 to 5% reduction, and state's running about 3. So it gives us a little, the projections are about 3, so it gives us a little wiggle room in
You got
sales
wiggle
tax.
room throughout things. So in the end, we ended up a little more positive than we thought we would be 2 months ago.
Yes, and we're hoping that trend continues, so.
And that's consistent. We had a call yesterday with, the league, and they had somebody from state talk about projections and where they are today. They actually had done a forecast a month ago.
A month ago, yeah.
And they actually asked to have it redone, and the guy turned it around in 24 hours based on new information. And he said, the worst case is still bad, but it's way less bad.
Right.
And the best case is still bad, but it's way less bad. So I think the best case, or the worst case, we're about half of the negative that he thought that was gonna be. It was about half of what that was on the top end and on the low end. So, but, you know, it could, who knows? You know, with the way the world's going, an asteroid could start tomorrow. And
The other location that we're been a little conservative is building permits. If Boyer really gets going, then, and they start doing production homes, then that could increase quite a bit. Revenue from that.
My patients that do real estate say they can't find enough houses for people to
Yeah.
buy. So I'm not sure that it's not a really good housing market, really.
No, they've changed their stance a little bit, because 2 months ago, it was, oh, we need to, you know, just kind of take our time and see what happens, and now it's like, we gotta get things done now, so, it's changed in that standpoint.
Scott, I imagine
There's
with
upside.
the interest rates are unbelievable right now. You know, if you're gonna go buy a home or refinance, I mean, when you say historical low, they're below 3%. So, I assume that's what's fueling a little bit of that. And what we were hearing from the Federal Reserve, you know, that they're still saying that they're gonna keep rates low to 2022. So I think this next 12 months, you know, now things can adjust, but that's what, you know, so I think our building will pick up. But coming back to Scotch, did you guys move some numbers around at all from what you've done in the years past? You kept the conservative approach, what you've done in the years past, and not try to push certain envelopes?
No.
Because that's where Scott's saying, we've been able to usually catch up as we start moving in the year and start having savings. And so I think that's where Scott was saying, hopefully we might be able to catch up and show we're not in the negative, as, you know, because we're voting right now.
That's what we're hoping for.
Now, we're $45,000 in the red starting right now.
Right.
Which is better than last year, because we were down
291 is what we projected last year.
to start with the budget. So we're actually less in the red at the outset than this year, or even the previous years. It's always.
We've always done pretty well. So in looking at it, the last 18, 19, we were a net positive. You know, the difference between our projections and what came in was about $20,000, somewhere in there. Prior to that, it was in a couple $100,000, like prior 2 years. So we're gotten better at our projections.
So let's kind of just follow through a checkbook. At our bottom time in our checkbook, we have 500,000. We're saying that last year, we're gonna take 172,000 of that.
291.
291.
But now we're saying it's down to
172.
Yes.
And then we're gonna take our checkbook down another you know, after all the income comes in this year,
Correct.
we're gonna take it down another 45,000.
Correct.
But
We better get out to work. We gotta start making more money.
Well, we're hoping that because we're doing a conservative estimate, that we'll actually be in the black.
I mean, really, 45 compared, to deal with COVID and things like this, I mean, this is
I agree.
really pretty darn good, considering we were at 300 2 months ago. So,
All right, any other discussion? Anybody ready to make a motion?
Mayor, you need to hold a public hearing.
Oh, sorry. All right. Brian, do you have anything to add?
We actually do have a comment on YouTube Live. Colby Gibson, this goes back to the seasonal wage discussion, is asking, what does the 20,000 increase in open space seasonal wages go towards? And I'd love to hear what projects are being worked first. Do we have a city plan yet for what is going to be done and when? For open space. So he's
So
curious essentially what our plan is for the seasonal open space money, the extra 20,000,
So,
and are there any projects we're prioritizing?
so here's my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong. When the council went through the work session last week, I was gonna say last year, it sometimes feels
I
like a
know,
year.
it seems like a year ago.
We looked at previous year budget and saw that it was 20,000 short. So council was just trying to be realistic with what it should be at as opposed to what was proposed. And since we did a much better job hiring this year, it probably would be closer to that. So that doesn't put any real extra money in the system. It just reflects more accurately what the costs will be. Now, in terms of projects for open space, for this summer, we are on the trails going to not resurface,
Crack
but seal
seal.
coat and crack seal.
and
It's about
seal coat.
64% of all the trails in Highland. And we're also doing extra weed abatement. We have one or two staff people with backpacks spraying weeds along the trail corridor. And that's different than last year. Is there anything else, Todd? Okay, and then, so that's pretty accurate. You give the mayor some leeway here. And then on Todd's plate is by the fall to have a 5-year plan similar to the road plan for trails and what we're doing. And Brian Braithwaite, who is in the room here, is also working on options for the trail corridors. But those are all being worked on, and there's no specific, nothing specific yet.
And then, Mayor, I think in the fall, as Brittany Bills has brought up, I think we need to discuss, we have about $420,000 that's in the open space fund. We have $3.2 million in a park fund.
These are capital, these are.
So we're gonna need to look at some things that,
What we could spend those on.
yeah, I think 420 came in from sales, up from the open space. The 3.2, you're gonna have maybe 1.5 of that is earmarked only for capital, and the other has been property sales that doesn't have limitations on them, just going off memory.
And a lot of that comes from the sale of Spring Creek property.
Over half
Yeah,
that
the
comes in.
1.5 Spring Creek, and then
There's
you have
400,000.
Patterson.
Patterson.
Patterson, and then, Dry Creek.
And then we have this,
Right.
we're gonna be talking about an item here in just a minute. It is about parks, what we're gonna be doing on some, the 60,000 with the parks.
Oh, and the Parks, Trails, and Tree Commission is, one of their charters is to put a recommended list of capital improvements together and then provide that to the council in a prioritized format. And then that's gonna be a real big help. So, any other questions, comments? All right, with that, the public hearing is closed, and we're moving on to additional comments or a motion.
I'd just like to ask one question, since Chief Thompson's here. I noticed in your budget, and I'm not on the Lone Peak Safety Board, so I'm not quite sure, but you dropped your budget by $50,000 between last year and this year. Can you explain a little bit how that happened? Where did you find the cost savings?
Some of it was in the personnel budget, as we looked at, the way we were allocating the medical benefits. When I presented the budget last year, we showed all of our full-time employees as if they were on a family plan, and that was what was proposed, and approved last year. As we went through and audited that, we found that we have several employees that are younger and don't have a family yet. And so what we did is went with actuals, and then we'll just address those if the plan changes. So there was some reduction there. And then, some of it was based, a small portion of it was based on Tier 1 versus Tier 2 employees that we've replaced with full-time, as far as the full-time staff was concerned. So there was some, I guess, between 2 or 3 accounts, there was some money that we found we could just trim out and not affect the budget, negatively.
Okay.
And that, by the way, thank you, because I think that's helped our budget this year with some expenditures. If there's no other comments, I'd like to move that the city council adopt a resolution approving the final budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021, subject to the following changes. 1, the 2% merit increase will not be allocated until the council provides authorization. 2, the inclusion of a staff engineer.
I'll second it.
So motion by Kurt, second by Tim. Ready to vote? Aaron? All right. And the answer is, it passes unanimously. All right. Next is a resolution regarding the approval of an interlocal agreement with Utah County regarding the use of CARES Act funds. Do you want to do that, Nathan, or you want me to do it?
I had you on that since you're the expert.
Okay, so the county a couple months ago received $111 million from the federal government because they were of a size sufficient to get that directly instead of having it go through the state. The cities negotiated with the county and came up with a plan to have 40% of that money be allocated to the cities, 40% to the county, and then 20% to an economic improvement plan to be administered by the county for all businesses in all cities in the county. Our share of that money is like $1.36 million. The purpose of that money is to mitigate COVID-related expenses for government. Now, in the case of the county, I'm sure they've had to hire additional tracing personnel to help with COVID. They also hired somebody specifically to manage this budget for them because it was a lot of money, and to keep up with the rules. They keep changing and actually getting a little bit more liberal in how that money can be used. And they were willing to allocate our 40% immediately to us if we signed an agreement with them, an interlocal agreement that indemnifies them from if we choose to use that money in ways that the federal government didn't approve, that if we were audited and found wanting, that we owed the money, not the county, is the basic intention of this document. And it also stipulates that any money we don't use by the end of October or have earmarked for use, we can petition them and say, hey, we haven't used all of it, but we have a plan to use the rest of some part of it between now and the end of the year. Any money we haven't used by the end of October that we have to send back to them by a date in early November, like November 3rd or 5th or so. You identify it on the 1st, and then it has a few days to get there, basically. So the only comment that the county received on their original document actually came from Rob. He thought there was an area that could be cleaned up and be more clear, and they jumped all over making that change. And so thank you, Rob, for being diligent in improving it. And what that means is if we adopt this and then we sign and send it to the county, that within a day or two, they will transfer money from their PTIF fund that has this to ours. So it'll be a same-day transfer, and we will have that money in our bank by the end of the week. It'll start drawing interest for us. Interest gained on that money is still subject to the rules that the federal government has, and we have to give it back if we don't use it. But staff will work on looking at, there's still, the rules are flexing, but staff is already looking to identify things that we can spend it on that are COVID-related that fit within the guidelines. And this, in my view, is off the books money because we have to use it or it goes back, so this doesn't accrue to our reserve. It's targeted money, and we'll just have to see what happens with it. But I think we can use a fair amount of it for good things. And then I like the idea that the county is going to put together a economic program for grants for businesses. And their objectives are to have it not be one that just benefits a limited number of businesses. They want to target small businesses and see what they can do there. There was a committee formed of 7 people. Nathan Ivey, one commissioner, and then 6 mayors, including Kafusi, Mayor Provo, the mayor of Spanish Fork, the mayor of Cedar Hills, Lehigh, and I don't remember, I think it might have been Vineyard, and one other. Well, the bottom, on the list of votes, Cedar Hills and Goshen had the bottom votes. So Cedar Hills was put in and Goshen was the alternate. So they actually have 6 plus an alternate, which makes sense. And they're starting to meet this week. So I'm supportive of this. I would rather have the money in our hands and looking at it than the counties.
So could the city staff maybe give us 2 or 3 examples where you would use this money?
Yes, so we have PP&E expenses, that the fire and police have, accrued, and we'll pay our portion, Alpine will pay their portion from those funds. We are looking at, we have some cleaning expenses in this building, obviously that, we've bought some sneeze guards, things like that, standard stuff like that. One of the things we're looking at is actually improved software to better interact remotely with the residents. We're having troubles with express bill pay. We'd like better online reservations, better accounting stuff. Anyways, so that's an example. We've just started looking at brainstorming, that kind of stuff.
So, for example, the police chiefs had one person down with COVID,
Yes,
and they
sorry,
had
that
to
too.
quarantine another one. So costs related to that, personnel costs related to
Right.
COVID can be paid for out of this fund. So public safety, personnel costs specific to COVID.
So if we have to put somebody on quarantine, we had one that had a potential exposure at home a little while ago. We had them stay home until they got test results back. This is a different library. But even the library is an example. We ran the library with 3 people for 2 days. I mean, it's those kind of expenses that we normally wouldn't have is what we would include in that. But there's also some other things that we can that will benefit our ability to respond, especially if there's outbreak this fall.
So, and another way we could use it is to pay for COVID tests for all, like, public-facing employees. And if the antibody test becomes useful, we could use that money to pay
Your
for
commercial
that as well.
labs have the antibody tests now. I've been ordering them on several patients, because everybody thinks they've had COVID, but they haven't. I'm not kidding, but, yeah.
So a question I have is, right now, we're having to do a lot more, with our broadcast system. Can any of that money go towards, and can we put cameras up that are for our council meetings, because it allows people to be able to chime in during the COVID time period or anything that way?
Yeah, so all of the costs associated with Zoom, with YouTube, and all that stuff that we've done, that can all be attributed to that.
What about new equipment? If we want to install 2 cameras that people...
Yeah, we have to, there's guidelines from the federal government of what we can use them on, and we have to follow those. We haven't jumped into anything. So, for example, if we did software, some of it could be COVID, some of it's going to be us, that kind of stuff. But we haven't jumped into that. It's
just thinking
not a
really
blank
large,
check.
like the Arts Council, where they haven't been able to have smart classes, could we buy like when they come for the art show, could we buy little dividers so that the people have to walk in a certain area so they can't come out another? I'm just trying to think out of the box a little bit.
You
So
know,
the-
We'll check into it.
yes,
So the-
we
The
It's-
county has a resource that we can call who's looking into that.
can do that.
And
We haven't
they
even
can come up-
brainstormed it yet. I mean, those are just initial thoughts, so.
So you'll bring these ideas to the council?
Oh, of course. Of course. So, what we don't wanna do is we don't want to,
Use the money, not to pay
sacrifice
it.
our own ethics and stretch it for, hey, this is an opportunity to buy 45 new trucks and blah, blah, blah. We don't wanna do that.
Even if we have two people right in the same truck?
I'm just, Kurt, you know what I'm saying.
So, just kind of a general question. So we just approved our budget. The budget doesn't
Yes.
include any of this money because we don't know how much
Nope.
we're gonna
Right.
spend. So do we just do this as we amend the budget during the year?
So
'Cause
what
I
we're
mean,
doing.
all of a sudden, we've got 1.3 million more.
Yes. What we're doing is we've created an account just for COVID expenses. So everything is going into that we know about. This money will actually be in a PTIF account, kind of like a capital account, separate funds, and that's how we tracked it when we get it. Think of it, sort of like the road fund money, road fee money, it goes right into a capital account for roads. That's where this is gonna go. So every expenditure will be tracked, et cetera,
Yeah, and we're obligated by this agreement to
to do
track,
that.
to track expenses.
Yep. Does that make sense, Scott? Did I lose you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any other questions? This is, we need to approve a resolution authorizing us to sign that. I'd give it back to the county.
I move the city council approve resolution 2020XX pertaining to the interlocal agreement with the CARES Act funds.
And as written, or?
As written.
I'll
is there a
second the motion.
So motion by Kurt, second by Kim. Ready to vote? Okay. Kurt?
Yes.
All right, Kurt's a yes. Mm. And yeah, that passes unanimously. All right, next action item is set a budget for the revision to Wild Rose Park. The city council will set a budget for the revision to Wild Rose Park as requested by the Parks, Trails, and Tree Commission. So Nathan, who's got that?
That's me and Mr. Braithwaite. So as you're aware, we've talked quite a bit about this, so I'll make it brief. Wild Rose residents have requested a number of improvements to their park, including additional trails, a pavilion, removal of some of the trees in the orchard, adding additional trees, those type of things. The proposed funding for those improvements would come from the payment in lieu of building a recreation area in the Fairfield Code. I'm just gonna call it Fairfield Code to keep it separate, development. The fee in lieu of payment is $60,000. The estimated cost, we had GB Brown, who did our Spring Creek plans, put together an estimated cost for those improvements with construction plans and everything like that. It's about $69,000. So obviously, there's a miss there. The council has also talked about whether or not all that $60,000 should be used in Wild Rose, or should a portion of that, or all of it, or whatever percentage be used for other projects in the city. In talking with Brian a couple weeks ago, they're starting their meetings with Wild Rose, and they really need to know a budget so they know where to, how much volunteer they can get, and how much they have to spend, and prioritize the improvements from there. So, with that, Brian, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Don't be nervous.
I just want to know why the romantic novels that I requested in the survey didn't show up. It's really disappointed. I did that
Because
last year and it showed up, and this year I don't get any
Because we
credit.
bought them already for you, that's why.
I've been in there. There's nothing new. I just
There's no
want
new,
you to know.
there's no new
So-
romantic novels. That's not, that's
Tom,
not
if you're
saying
still
much, Brian.
listening, you've been put on notice,
Just saying,
okay?
just saying. Really, for the discussion to be worthwhile with the Wild Rose residents, we need to have some scope of how we negotiate or how we talk to them. And so that's really the request. And obviously, we can't finalize anything. We're not going to project to them that, you know, what they negotiate with us is the final thing. It will always have to come back to city council because we don't have the authority to prove it. But we're being sent there to talk to them about this, and that we are hopefully going to do a good job that the city council would appreciate and like, and then they would be willing to support that. But there's no guarantee. So we're not going in, this is not a final number, but it's got to be something that we can at least work with. So that's the reason for the request.
So council,
That has got to be your shortest talk ever.
You know, it was
It's okay,
really
though.
fun coming
It's okay.
back today. It was really fun,
Don't bait him.
but I have a call at 6 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. And of all the days you guys are gonna take 2 hour plus on your consent items, this would be the day you would do it. The day that I have to come in, and I'm last on the agenda, but you guys did good up till now,
Well,
other than that.
we've been moving along fine since. So I'd just like to say a couple things. One, I appreciate you taking this on, because it's always a challenge to work with neighbors when they have expectations and reality sets in. You know, Kurt and I have talked a little bit about this. When we got $60,000 from the developer, I just kind of assumed it would all go to Wild Rose Park, because those 6 homes are gonna be using that park. But as we talked, it seems to me, and you can better say, that there are a lot of other needs throughout the city, and many in open space neighborhoods. And I said to Kurt, I said, you know, when I was on the council the first time, we made some big improvements with $30,000 a year in the Highland Glen Park. So I was kind of thinking, I mean, we weren't conspiring to that, but we talked about maybe approving half of the 60,000 and then maybe using the other 30,000 somewhere else. But I don't know what you think about that. I know there's been kind of a request for some more improvements in Beacon Hill Park, for pavilion maybe over in Highland Hills. I don't know. I mean, you folks are gonna make the recommendation as a committee. What's your feelings about things? Because Wild Rose Park's a nice little park, but there's only a few homes. I don't think it's very heavily used by citizens in Highland.
There's a lot of Cedar
yeah.
Hills residents that love using that little park.
That's right, but they're not paying for it.
We have not done a full assessment of all the parks and the trails and
Mhm.
things. We're just in the beginning phases of those kinds of things. And so, personally, that is never going to be a heavily used park. It doesn't have the parking unless the city council wants to change that dramatically and put additional parking. It has 3.5 sides that have homes next to it that don't allow people to park there, and so to have any kind of event would be really difficult. We had the problem down at Windsor where all these people were parking on both sides because there was no real parking, it was a mess. Well, this is way worse. They have less parking on the streets, and so you really can't do anything unless we're willing to change it dramatically. It needs some improvements to be more usable. I don't think that it's being used as much as it could be, but there are so many needs in this city for parks and stuff that can be improved that, you know, you just have to, we're gonna come in with a priority, but we're gonna have residents, everybody that lives near a park is gonna be screaming for their piece. So it's gonna be hard.
So would it be a good idea, throwing out here, just off the top of my head, to say, all right, we will use at least 50% of the money for this park, but no more than 60 or 65 or whatever, so that there's a range that Brian has to work with instead of just a
You know, so I
top
actually,
end.
I went and walked the park today. I walked around the whole trail, looked at the trees. I knocked on a couple of doors, because you want to be sensitive to, there's 14 homes currently. We're going to be adding 6 other homes. But I'm going, we've had a lot of open space parks, but there's been subdivisions built by them that have added homes. So I'm going, so my recommendation is to, if some were saying maybe don't take out all the apple trees, maybe you take out half, that's something you're gonna have to go feather up. If we did take out some apple trees, some people might enjoy the wood, because if you are a barbecuer, that's apple wood. I'm just, it would bring about certain, people might say, hey, I'll come cut down a certain portion. Now, we'd be left with stumps that we'd have to do something with, and maybe we put some grass. It was funny, I was watching where some of the youth were coming as they're walking, because there was a couple of youth, you're right, they came out of the Cedar Hills neighborhood, but then they went down, if you've been down there where the Lambrels live, then they went right in the back of Lambrels, they came down the trail, and they went back of Lambrels to go to the other neighborhood. And I'm going, because I kept going, why is there a little dirt trail across the orchard? No one could ever tell me why there's a dirt trail in the middle of the orchard. Where are they trying to go? Because I kept trying to watch. I was there probably for an hour. So my recommendation is about, Scott, I think if we looked at doing $30,000, what type of improvements would $30,000 provide us in that park? And that's probably be sensitive, because we are going to be not providing some open space area in that 6 homes coming in. But I see a lot of other needs in other parks. That's when I drove up by Beacon Hills. I went through other areas today, and I thought, you got 200 homes sitting up in that Beacon Hills area, and that park, it's pretty, has a beautiful view, but there's really nothing there other than a couple soccer goals and a hard to
And
get
a parking
in.
lot.
And the parking lot's terrible, to be honest. You're going around with the little, it might be you recommend ripping out that little planter thing so that people can actually get into that parking area a little better. There's a number of things I think we're gonna have to look at in our parks. So I'm kind of thinking, let's see what 30,000 can do. You might come back and say, we can't get anything done with 30,000. And then as a council, we'll have to decide, do we up it, or do we punt and go somewhere else?
But I remember in the past, we did quite a bit for $30,000 in Highland Glen on a yearly basis. So I think there's something you could do, and maybe even get people to help, I don't know.
It was back in the old days when we were getting lots of stuff
I know it's
for our
less
money.
than 10 years ago, though, it's not that bad. I bet Todd could get Dry Creek to come rip out the trees, they're good at that.
30,000, and what you're saying is right. We were able to get a lot for 30,000, but what you may not remember is staff did a lot of the work. So the 30,000 was mostly for materials.
Right.
And then staff did a whole bunch of stuff. And we're gonna be proposing that kind of stuff. We're gonna want the residents to see, you wanna buy into this, how much are you gonna be able to do? And there's limits on what they can do from a, safety standpoint and skill standpoint. But we wanna propose that, but we wanna talk about what is it that you really want and what can they do based upon what they're wanting.
That's right. So like with Highland Glen, for example, the city in that budget bought some sod, and we had a neighborhood scout troop and a congregation there came and laid it all, and they did a great job. So I mean, there's things you can.
We got aeration, and we had
Yeah.
somebody with their scuba suit went out and put it in and
Right.
got it working and all sorts of stuff, so.
Yeah, I think the aeration was donated.
It was. That's what I'm saying is, we didn't have to pay for that, but we
Yeah.
still had city staff put it in place and they maintain it.
I agree with the 30,000. I think that's a good compromise. I'm on board with that.
Ready for a motion?
Is this a motion or a recommendation?
Well, this is a motion. We set a budget for Brian to use. Doesn't mean it can't be adjusted up or down.
Brittany wants to make the motion.
Yes, she does. I can just see.
Brittany.
Good call, Scott.
Brittany. You can do it. You can do it.
Page number is this on?
Yes, you can.
Page 223.
And I Move that we have a budget of $30,000 to be spent at Wild Rose Park.
I'll second it.
Moved by Brittany, seconded by Scott. Ready for a vote? Is this on the, okay, we're ready for a vote?
Kim was first.
Oh, look how fast, wow, okay. I blinked and it was done. That passes